Immortal Cultivation in the Cybernetic Milky Way. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301. Let's Poison. Nanling saved a life and also gained some valuable human experiment data, which made him feel quite satisfied. He sent the experimental data to Ge Chen on the spot, but he unexpectedly found that he failed to send it. He stood up and looked around, only to find that everyone in the dance party had gathered here, with Fanny, Mo and Thongshi as the backbone to continuously resist the robots around. Nanling then put on his pure color faith and said, "We are silenced by the communication. Have the digital life of this space station rebelled?" He thought of this at the first time, because in his intelligence core recognition, these robots were all the mechanical guards of this Juntan space station. Mo said, "Don't worry, Sister Liji is already cracking the opponent's data blockade. Although that is an old digital life, Sister Liji's computing power is not much worse than the opponent, and it is still growing in the confrontation." At this time, Ge Qingfei was tangled beside her. She didn't want to get too close to Fanny, but she didn't feel safe anywhere else. She complained, "What's going on? Why are all the robots here rebelling? What are they going to do?" Although Fanny usually showed that she hated this sister of the own family, she still tried her best to protect Ge Qingfei at this time. Surprisingly, Cao had already achieved a good record without making any noise. He was completely different from ordinary people. He seemed to be very good at hand-to-hand combat. In front of him, he had easily dismantled the bodies of several robots, which showed his extremely good strength. It was a pity that his cultivation was only at the 8th level of foundation building. It seemed that he was a member of the stuck realm and could not break through. Nanling only paused for a moment and knew what to do now. He pulled out another gun from Liji's stomach. It was not his long-sight Angwefeng gun, but the Shenfeng Zero. It was really surprising that the kinetic weapon that looked full of ancient texture appeared here. But then Nanling raised his gun and shot one by one. The bullet carrying the concept of spiritual power could cut a robot in half on the spot. This was a very powerful killing power, and it looked very calm. Seeing this, Fanny also let go of her reserve. She laughed and took out her absolute flame zero, and also opened fire. For the strong, this situation might be similar to a shooting game. It's you who can think of something interesting. She was very satisfied with Nanling, and even felt that they were soulmates. But Nanling asked at this time, "Sister Mo, why don't you lower the protection around us, so that the ballroom will be absolutely safe at least?" Mo shook her head and said, "Because I still have doubts. I don't understand why that digital life is doing this. After all, this space station is one of the cores of the Star Federation. There must be a real strong man in charge. The dilemma here should not last long. I just wonder why that digital life is making such a fuss." Nanling's mind swept across the whole place and immediately found some familiar faces. He first came to Fox and asked, "Mr. Fox, did the Seeker know that something like this would happen here?" It was hard for him not to doubt it. After all, even if the Seeker was a projection, he couldn't be unaware of the turmoil brewing here. Fox said seriously, "The Master never interferes with human affairs. In his view, any rise, fall, turmoil, and prosperity are the laws of development, and that is not the direction he is looking for." Nanling understood that the Seeker, the ancient star-brilliant pioneer, was definitely in existence beyond the world, and his question was indeed a bit silly. Then he came to another acquaintance and asked in surprise, "Brother Lulai, why are you here too?" He is the commander of the Elk Fleet. Although his personal ability is not very good, his qualifications and prestige are online. He is definitely a powerful person who can suppress the situation at any time. But such a person is now trapped here with them. In other words, Lulai is out of touch with his fleet at this time. Lulai said with a sad face, "I'm also one of the invited guests. After all, this is a state banquet. As half the host, I was originally invited to stand by the scene. I didn't expect such a thing to happen." Nanling hesitated, and he asked, "If the old man is not here, can the Elk Fleet respond in time?" Lulai said, "I'm afraid not. Although my subordinates are very capable, they don't get along with each other. If I am not here, they will definitely quarrel." Mo said from the side, "Very good, at least we know what is the most important thing at the moment. We must send Mr. Lulai back to his fleet, otherwise there will be big trouble." Her wisdom has obviously analyzed the real intention of this situation. She said, Since the internal turmoil can be quelled sooner or later, then the other party's actions are very likely to echo the actions of others outside. Lu Lai became more anxious when he heard this. Because of his job responsibilities, he even guessed that this would be the case. At this time, he was just more certain. He said anxiously, "No, we must rush out, otherwise something bad will happen." Mo nodded, pointed to the high windows around where the robot guards were still jumping out, and said, "Now we have many choices, but the problem is that the authority of the entire space station is in the hands of that digital life. If we want to get from here to your fleet, we have to go through a lot of things that can be seen with the naked eye." Lu Lai's face darkened when he heard this. He knew that this matter was troublesome. He then looked at Li Ji, gritted his teeth and said, "Is your companion also a digital life?" He was indeed experienced and saw it. Li Ji did not hide it and nodded frankly. He said, "You don't have the authorization of the space station, so you can't deal with Ping like this." The name of the digital life was Ping. Lu Lai said in a very bold and resolute manner, "I will give you the authority to help you resist Ping." Li Ji was stunned, but Nanling suddenly frowned and said, "This is not a good idea. I think if you give the authority to Sister Li Ji, you'll be held accountable later, right?" Lu Lai gritted his teeth and said, "So what? Compared with that, leading the fleet to defeat the invading enemy and stabilizing the situation in the special zone is my main job. I can't take care of other things for the time being." But Nanling didn't want his sister Li Ji to be involved in such things. Because he has realized that the so-called commander of the Elk Corps is not such an important person, but has a heavy responsibility. So Lu Lai's doing this will not only bring him trouble, even if he succeeds, Li Ji will face the risk of being purged or silenced by the Star Federation. Who knows what kind of filth will be hidden under that authority? So Nanling thought quickly for a while and asked, "Brother, if I tell you that I have a thing that can crash the entire network, do you dare to use it?" Lu Lai was stunned for a moment, then his eyes suddenly lit up, and he nodded abruptly. "If that's the case, it would be great. Compared with other losses, the network of a space station is insignificant." Ge Qingfei shuddered suddenly. She seemed to hear some keywords. Chapter 302. Is this the core of a serious person's intelligence? This guy is going to do something bad again. Fanny whispered to Mo, as if she was telling her rival. Mo's eyes sparkled, and she said, "Don't you think he looks good when he's wise?" Fanny covered her face and said, "Mo, you're done." Then she looked at Nanling with sparkling eyes, which was a little handsome. Lu Lai was completely attracted by Nanling's proposal. He said, "How to poison? Ping was a digital life more than 200 years ago. I'm afraid he won't be affected by ordinary viruses. Even if there is a powerful virus, it can completely isolate it." Nanling looked around and found that both Fanny and Mo were looking at him, and then he smiled brightly. Seeing that concubine Yu King was also glaring at him, he immediately glared back. Then he said mysteriously, "Brother, here is a way to completely sever ties and lure the other party into the trap, but you need to pay some personal price." Lu Lai frowned and said, "Personal price? You tell me, even if it means I lose everything I have, I'll do it." Nanling said, "That's not necessary, but brother, you will lose a smart core that I currently use frequently." Lu Lai immediately said, "What kind of loss is this? Tell me what I should do." Nanling pointed to the smart core necklace on his chest and said, "It's very simple. You first hack into my smart core to load data. No matter what happens, don't panic. You immediately use your authority to connect to the network of this place and try to seize control of the network like an ant trying to shake a tree." Lu Lai savored it for a moment and said, "This feels like saying to Ping, 'Come and fuck me.'" Nanling shrugged and said, "Do you think the digital life named Ping will be fooled?" Lu Lai said speechlessly, "It will definitely be fooled, because it also desires my authority, so that the turmoil it causes can be expanded from Jumton to the entire special zone." He nodded heavily and said, "Well, I hope your virus works, otherwise I'm really finished. But if I do nothing, I'm finished anyway, so I might as well take a gamble." Lu Lai made a decision quickly. He immediately tried to invade Nanling's smart core with his own smart core as Nanling said. This process should not be too easy. Lu Lai found that Nanling's smart core did not even have a normal firewall. It was simply open to invasion. No, there was still some resistance, but this resistance actually gave people a feeling of reluctant to refuse but also welcoming. He was shocked. What kind of person could give his smart core such a sexy feeling? However, soon his three views were refreshed again. Because he loaded a bunch of confusing data, his smart core was not working properly. The resource usage rate soared, and the data packet began to expand infinitely after finding the memory space. The key is that it was not a copy-type expansion, but a completely disordered chaotic calculation, so that the computing power of Lulai's smart core was taken away all at once, and the entire smart core experienced a jamming phenomenon that should not have happened. Lulai looked at Nanling in amazement. He really couldn't imagine what kind of person could stuff such a terrible thing into his smart core. He also set the firewall of the smart core so ambiguously. Is this purely to harm people? But now he has confidence in Nanling's method, because this mess of data is too unreasonable. Once this data is loaded, all the computing power will involuntarily lean towards it and start crazy chaotic calculations. Nanling said, "Turn on the automatic deletion function, it should be able to maintain an 80% resource utilization rate, but the original information in your smart core will also be deleted in the process. Now you can proceed to the next step." Lulai took a deep breath, prepared himself mentally, and then used his authority to try to seize control of the network according to the plan. At the first moment, the movements of the surrounding machine guards became unnatural. This was Lulai's attempt to seize control of them. At this time, Lulai heard a voice. "Don't resist in vain, your authority belongs to me." "Wait, what is this unreasonable data?" The voice stopped abruptly. Lulai was at a loss for a moment. Did something happen just now? Suddenly, he felt a pain in his chest. It turned out that the intelligence core had been completely overloaded. Now the temperature was boiling and it automatically shut down. Because the intelligence core was shut down, he also lost the connection to the network of this special zone, just like a person who was used to surfing the internet suddenly unplugged his network cable, and suddenly he didn't know what to do. Liji came back to her senses with lingering fear and said, "It succeeded." The network of the entire Jumton space station and even the network of the entire Fanxing special zone was paralyzed. That group of data streams is too terrible, especially for digital life like us. King Fei was furious at the time. She said, "I knew it. You were the one who paralyzed the network of Chuxing. But I was punished by my family again." Nanling didn't even look at this young lady. This was just his self-defense technique. If he didn't invade his intelligence core, how could he encounter such a thing? When the network collapsed, the robot guards who were besieging everyone also stopped. Nanling smiled and looked at Lulai and said, "Brother, you can do the next thing by yourself, right?" Mo stretched out his hand and twisted it. The sealed door was immediately unlocked and opened with a loud noise. Everyone saw that many robots in the square outside the door had stopped working and stood there blankly. This was because they had lost the order from their superiors. Seeing this, Lulai immediately said, "Don't worry, I also have an emergency plan. The most troublesome part has been solved. I will reunite with the fleet myself." Fanny shook the Absolute Flame Zero in her hand and said in a rather chic manner, "Okay, we should go back to. I hope this chaos can be settled soon. After all, we have just set up an industry in this space station." So Juxia and the others parted ways. "Sister King Fei, you should go back to your place too. Why are you following us?" King Fei stopped for a moment. She should have followed the representatives of the ancient domain, but she was not familiar with those people and now felt insecure. She lost her sense of security and subconsciously followed the familiar people. When being driven away, they were as bewildered as abandoned animals. Seeing this, Fanny sighed deeply in her heart, and then said, "You are my sister, come with me, I will protect you here." She was kind-hearted after all, and chose to accept King Fei at this time. Then she looked at Cao and said, "That's right, you'll be responsible for taking care of this idiot later." Cao immediately bowed and said, "Yes, miss." Chapter 303 There is always an emergency plan. Von Malin building was in a state of panic. After all, for ordinary people, a network outage may only happen once in a lifetime. Nanling looked at the chaotic appearance of the merchants and guests in the building, turned his head and said to Li Ji, "At least the network of our building can be restored, right?" Li Ji said, "Don't worry, I have specially set up the network of this building. After the external network is disconnected, it can actually be used as a local area network." Nanling said, "Then restore the local area network, and then issue a notice to calm them down. By the way, activate the emergency plan No. 6. Fan and I blinked. The previous emergency plan No. 2 had already surprised her, and now there is another No. 6. Li Ji was also confused. She said, "Wait, you didn't put something weird in my body again?" Even Li Ji didn't know what the No. 6 emergency plan was, Nanling said, don't be nervous. I just made some space in the underground maintenance layer to store things. It is usually disconnected from the internet. It can be connected to the building network by physically starting it. As for the startup method, he used his wind control technique to carry his thoughts with the wind and came to the underground pipeline maintenance passage. He transformed a small warehouse here. Don't ask him how he made this warehouse. The answer is time management. The wind with his will easily interfered with reality. He likely pulled a switch in a box, causing the door of this small warehouse to be opened. But this warehouse looks small from the outside, but the internal space is quite open. It is obvious that the technology of folding space is used. As the warehouse door opened, Li Ji's eyes lit up, and then she said speechlessly, "You hear 100 robots downstairs?" Nanling nodded and said, "There is also a small fusion reactor, which has not been turned on yet. I tried to make it myself. By the way, there is also emergency plan No. 4. This is in the cold storage of the building. Let the robot start it. I have stored enough for daily necessities in it to supply us for 20 years. If it is converted to all the people in this building, it should be no problem to supply 3 months." Mo's first reaction at the time was to check Nanling's account. It is not too simple for a wife to check her husband's account. Just hack into it. Then she said helplessly, "Is this how you spend your own money?" Nanling widened his eyes and said aggrievedly, "How can this be considered as wasting money? Isn't it used now?" To be honest, Nanling has never spent too much money on her own enjoyment and entertainment. Instead, she has spent a lot of money on learning, equipment, experiments and emergency plans. Just like now, the water is pulled out and Mo feels distressed. This is all the family's money, and it was just spent like this. What a waste of money. Well, it is quite useful, thanks to you again this time. What else can Mo do? She can only praise. Anyway, she saw Nanling's aggrieved look and couldn't bear to continue complaining. Fanny felt that this woman was simply hopeless. She said, "It seems that supporting this man will be very expensive. You have to be mentally prepared." Mo said, "It's okay, I have asked my father for a large sum of money. Anyway, he has no plan to remarry and give me a brother or sister." Fanny. She thinks her uncles should be very worried now, right? So she decided to speak for her good sister. "What are you thinking? This Juntan space station is the core of the Star Federation, and it will definitely be able to restore order soon." This makes sense, and everyone agrees. However, Nanling counted with his fingers and said, "No, I think something big will happen." Fanny asked in confusion, "What?" Nanling looked at Fanny and sneered. She was the boss before and gave her face, but now this is a rival in love. So he said, "I just calculated that we have made a net profit of nearly 2 billion assets since arriving at the Star Federation. It's okay for other people, but it's a problem for you, boss." Fanny asked curiously, "What can I have a problem with?" Nanling said, "Every time you have a harvest, it is always accompanied by a tragic sacrifice. Although the situation with the Star Treasure just now is critical, not many people died after all." Mo suddenly coughed dryly and interrupted Nanling's words. She said, "Don't talk about such illogical things." Nanling shrugged, knowing that Mo was considering Fanny's face. Fanny originally thought that this matter was quite mysterious. After all, the title of Unlucky and I was quite loud in her circle of little sisters. Now seeing Mo speak for her, she immediately put aside her worries and became cheerful. Li Ji still issued a notice to reassure the people. The merchants in the building soon quieted down, and even the people who stayed in the building quickly calmed down. In fact, as long as someone is willing to take the lead in organizing, people are still willing to believe in order and chaos. Of course, even if someone wants to cause trouble, there is no need to worry. Nanling's emergency plan No. 6 is prepared for this situation. The small fusion reactor can provide energy for the entire building and can also produce some materials in a limited amount. In addition, the 100 fully armed robot guards were handed over to Li Ji for control. The entire mall was in order all of a sudden, and it seemed even more stable than before the accident. When everything was in order, everyone's expressions became solemn. Especially Fanny, who gradually pursed her lips and showed a wronged expression. Because after so long, the network of the Juntan space station has not been restored, which is completely inconsistent with the key identity of the Star Special Zone. When the Chuxing network had problems, the emergency equipment was activated within 3 to 5 minutes to restart the network. But now, the network of the Juntan space station has not been restored for an hour. Fanny began to doubt herself. Is she really a particularly unlucky person who can bring bad luck to everyone around her? Nanling saw her expression and immediately awakened his employee power. He suddenly said, well, maybe the hyperspace chaos information I left behind is a little too powerful. I hope they don't ask me for compensation, otherwise I will be in trouble. Fanny's eyebrows were visibly relaxed at the time. What is employee power? This is it. When the boss needs it, you'll take the blame decisively so that the boss can let go of his psychological burden. Fanny changed her mood directly, patted Nanling's shoulder and said earnestly, don't worry, if something really happens, we will not ignore you. Nanling didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This guy's mentality is too good, right? Fortunately, at this time, another weak voice sounded and explained the reason for them. The waiter who was carried in by them woke up and said weakly, I think this is because the 6 major families are arguing again. None of them is willing to spend their own resources to take care of this mess, so it has become like this. Chapter 304. Disaster of the Heavens. The waiter's name is Liu now. He is very clear-headed and has strong verbal expression skills. He analyzed the situation of the Star Federation to these outsiders in a few words. The Star Federation consists of 6 main star regions, more than 100 federal districts and a special zone. The 6 star regions represent 6 clans, and the planetary systems in those federal districts are controlled by many warlords, shables or inherited forces. If we really talk about the size, although the predecessor of the Star Federation is the disbanded Human Federation, it can still be said to be the largest force in the galaxy. But the premise is that they must be united internally. This has never been a united force. The 6 major clans are fighting each other, and countless alliances of various forces have their own different demands. The entire Star Special Zone has become a buffer zone for these forces, showing a false prosperity. It's okay when nothing happens, but when something happens, they blame each other and no one is willing to step forward. Nanling asked, isn't Lulai leading the Elk fleet to garrison the Special Zone? Can't he make a decision? Liu now smiled bitterly and said, General Lulai is only the rotating general for the past 3 years. The fleet he leads is only responsible for external defense, but if he interferes in the internal affairs of the Special Zone, he will be overstepping his authority. Nanling asked, okay, tell me how they rotate. Liu now said, now the Ajit family is in charge of the Special Zone's political affairs, the Qi family is responsible for the law, and the Lu family is responsible for military defense. The other 3 clans are temporarily in the opposition and will take turns to manage the Special Zone after the rotation. But that's just daily management. When it comes to decision-making, the parliament still has to be convened. That's when the big scene begins. The 6 clans and the members of parliament represented by other forces, big and small, are in various tugs of war. Every decree issued may lead to a fierce debate, or various exchanges of interests under the table. Nanling finally understood why the Star Federation was the largest in the world, but the other star regions were not afraid of it. It was because the internal conflicts of interest were too serious, and it was basically a mess. He suddenly realized something and said, so, the star regions controlled by the various clans are actually managed as solid as an iron bucket, and this Special Zone is the breakthrough point of the entire Star Federation. Liu said, yes, but this is just the surface. After all, the Special Zone connects too many interests of the entire Federation, and it is even the orthodox justice. Therefore, no one really wants to see the Special Zone fall. The current situation should be the same as the distribution of interests has not yet ended. Understood. In fact, to put it bluntly, the top leaders of the Federation are still going through the process. Fanny was completely relieved this time, at least she was sure that the situation this time had nothing to do with her bad luck, but was caused by the people at the Star Federation themselves. However, she overlooked a fact, that is, why did these things happen when she arrived at the Star Federation instead of earlier or later? Although everything seems to have nothing to do with her, metaphysics does not require any logic. However, things soon changed again. Suddenly, the entire space station shook. Nanling immediately used a wind escape to come to the outside of the building. He looked up and saw a big hole in the dome that was suddenly hit. The front end of a starship was stuck in the hole, and then dense compact units were released from both sides. This is really a ghost. What is this? Everyone came late at this time, and Liu now couldn't help but exclaimed. This is the warship of the Ghost Sea, they are the rebels of the Ghost Sea. What the hell is the Ghost Sea? Nanling felt that his head was about to explode. Is this Star Federation so complicated? But Nanling didn't have time to listen to Liu's detailed explanation of the origin, because those compact units had already spread out, and many began to attack this side. Nanling immediately performed the escape technique again and came to the top of the building. When he arrived, he saw a flash of lightning next to him, and Mo had already stood firm before him. She said, "All we can do now is to try to defend this building. I've asked Sister Liji, Fan and I and Hongxi to defend below, and we will conduct long-range attacks here." Nanling nodded and said, "This arrangement is very good. This is really a big trouble." Mo smiled at her and said, "After all, where Fan and I is, something will always happen." Nanling was surprised. Mo was still speaking for Fan and I just now, and now she said so again with him. Well, it seems that everyone knows about Fan and I's problem. He raised the Shenfeng Zero and aimed at the sky. He was about to pull the trigger, but suddenly stopped. Mo was standing next to her and was about to shoot. At this time, he suddenly asked in confusion, "Why don't you attack?" Nanling shook his head and looked at the warship that stuck its head out and said, "This ship can break through the defense of the space station. It is at least a medium-sized or even a battleship. Its target is unknown now. It would be bad if our actions are too conspicuous and the opponent's ship guns aim at us." Rigorous, this logic is so rigorous that Mo didn't know how to answer it. She could only say, "Okay, then Fanny and the others will be under more pressure down there." Nanling said indifferently, "It's okay, the more enemies of this level come, the happier she is." Mo shook her head and laughed. "You really understand Fanny. I always feel that it is you who grew up with her, not me. Speaking of which, you and Fanny are a good match. I seem to have stolen her husband." Nanling quickly reached out and touched her lips. The touch of that moment made both of them stunned. Then Nanling scratched his head and said, "Fanny and I feel like good brothers and good buddies. You are my wife. I can sleep in the same bed with my wife. Can I sleep in the same bed with my brother?" He said it very calmly. However, Mo said faintly, "Brother. It's not impossible." Nanling. Cough cough cough, what a tiger and wolf talk. Mo said again. "And you have never slept in the same bed with me." Nanling. Cough cough cough, he felt like he had caught the flu and was not feeling well. Fortunately, the starship that crashed into the spaceship came to the rescue, and the enemy ship guns fired a volley, attacking a certain position on the other side of the space station. He immediately changed the subject and said, "It seems that they came with a clear purpose. We can fight. These enemies are too close to our building." As he said that, he raised the muzzle of the Shenfeng Zero and pulled the trigger. Bang! With a crisp muffled sound, the bullet with tearing ammunition easily cut through the opponent's body, and then a large pool of purple red blood was sprinkled in the air. Nanling made a sound in surprise. Obviously he didn't expect that he shot down a creature. Originally, he thought it was just some kind of mechanical body because he saw that the other party was covered in armor. Using living beings as cannon fodder seems to be somewhat inconsistent with the current universal values. Could it be some artificial people again? Chapter 305 Another form of civilization. Nanling fired calmly, and wherever the bullet passed, it cut those beings sharply apart, and the purple red blood spread all over the ground. At the same time, his mind was also studying the lives he killed. Just at this moment, Mo stretched out his hand and locked an enemy with a magnetic field and pulled him back to the two of them. "Here, if you want to study it, come closer and study it." Mo still doted on him so much, and you could tell what he was planning just by looking at his expression. Nanling nodded, then took a blood sample and said, "From a genetic perspective, they should be human, but not completely human. There are too many things mixed in their genes, and I can't tell them apart for a while." The blood sample analysis was very fast, and he shared the genetic information on the public channel. He knew that he was not an expert in this kind of thing. And Liji, who had a huge database, quickly got the answer. She said, "There is a result that you will definitely be interested in." She kept it a secret for a while and then continued, "I found gene fragments similar to the nether locust in the blood samples of these guys." Mo was surprised and said, "How could this be? Did they merge the nether locust genes themselves?" Liji said, "It seems that they only intercepted some advantageous parts of the nether locust genes. There are many other advantageous genes from different organisms. I suspect that there may be another civilization direction among humans in this ghost sea." Nanling understood and said, "This is another direction of body modification. Unlike prosthetic modification, this is direct genetic modification, taking the biological route." Fanny interrupted, "But it is different from the biotechnology of King Shuan civilization." Nanling confirmed, "It is indeed different. King Shuan civilization is actually biological enhancement. Their original intention is to strengthen their own strengths and make up for their own weaknesses, all based on their own genes. And what these people in the Ghost Sea do is to completely replace the original human genes with foreign advantageous genes. In other words, they can't even be called human beings. Fana said, "Don't talk about that. I just want to know when I can start killing." Before Nanling finished speaking, Mo had already grasped his essence and said, "Of course, we will wait until those high-level people behind the scenes finally can't sit still and quickly reach an agreement, and then we will counterattack together with the counterattack of the space station, and it doesn't matter if we go beyond the limit." Fanny thought it made sense, but she couldn't help but say, "Mo, why are you talking more and more like the guy now?" She felt a little jealous, but she didn't know which direction she was jealous of. Mo didn't answer her, but turned her head to look at Nanling and said, "Am I right?" Nanling was slightly stunned, then smiled and gestured a thumbs up. "Absolutely right." A soft arc appeared at the corner of Mo's mouth, and she seemed quite happy. She liked Nanling's way of doing things. She would find it troublesome at first, but when she really did it, she found that this was the safest and least troublesome way. In short, Nanling's rigorous look was very much to her taste. At the same time, when the battleships of the Ghost Sea broke through the sky of the Jumpton space station and poured artillery fire into a secret place, the federal congressmen who were full of contradictions finally reached a consensus quickly, and the entire Jumpton space station finally entered an emergency restart state. Another network system was quickly activated, but this network was blank and many important information was lost. But it didn't matter, the point was that the space station could finally launch a counterattack. Countless defensive gun muzzles extended from the zenith and the top of the tall building, and then launched a counterattack against the starship that was poking in. The network was restored, and the self-defense mechanism of the space station was naturally restored. Nanling coughed dryly and said, "Start emergency plan no. 1. Mo was at a loss for a moment, and then heard Li Ji say happily, "I know this emergency plan, wait." As she spoke, many secret compartments on their roof opened, and a door of shrinking three-point return cannons poked out from the secret compartments and unfolded. Then Nanling said, "System O, these three-point return to the origin cannons can adjust the attack modes of thunder, wind, fire and three elements at will. Now I will adjust them all to thunder mode, and you can control them to perform the thunder barrage." Mo nodded, and the silver rope zero in her hand suddenly stopped, and the butt of the gun hit the ground and suddenly a circle of strong magnetic field appeared. The next moment, these small turrets were all controlled by the magnetic field and calibrated according to Mo's thoughts. At this time, Mo's Immortal Cultivation ability showed its power. She controlled the 30 turrets on the roof at the same time and quickly aimed. Then she raised the silver rope zero again, and the thunder spirit power brought up an energy field, covering the entire roof-top turret area. Nanling's hair stood up under this strong magnetic field. Under the control of this magnetic field, Mo waved the gun forward heroically, and the thunder barrage blessing fell. All the turrets fired together, interweaving a barrage that was not dense but absolutely powerful. Under this barrage, the Ghost Sea combat units that attacked from afar fell in groups. The thunder barrage can easily destroy all the devices on them, and even cause the nerve signals of their whole body to break. The direct killing power of thunder ammunition is the lowest among the 3 ammunition blessing spells, but its control power is definitely the strongest. When the enemies in the sky fell like dumplings, Fanny on the ground also killed them indiscriminately after receiving the news. Fanny laughed loudly, and the devilish laughter even reached Nanling on the roof. "She is so easy to be happy," Nanling praised. The Fanolin building was instantly surrounded by war. But the main body of the building was unexpectedly not damaged. The people hiding in the building only felt full of security, which made the customers who stayed in it have an inexplicable cognition. This building, this food court, is a safe place. After all, who normally opens an arms company in a food court? At this moment, the sky changed again. All of the Ghost Sea combat units that were still flying in the sky suddenly fell from the sky like rain. This was obviously the further recovery of the space station system, and the forbidden zone was opened again. Without the tense enemy groups blocking it, the internal defense artillery of the Jumpton space station also hit the starship stuck at the entrance, and it was blazing. The pressure on the roof of Nanling's building disappeared immediately, and they were able to check the battle situation. In the direction of the starship's artillery fire, a small team of Ghost Sea combat units rushed out under heavy guard. Surprisingly, they did not fly by technological means, but directly flew with wings on their backs. This can be said to be a perfect way to bypass the forbidden zone of the Jumpton space station. The opponent seemed to be well prepared. These people with wings on their backs were wearing armor and were fired upon by the defensive forces of the space station when they flew into the air. But they were obviously well prepared, and they actually withstood the firepower. After paying a heavy price, a small group of birdmen finally returned to the battleship. It looks like they succeeded. Mo judged. Nanling's expression changed and said, "Be prepared for defense, sir. Maybe they will do something desperate." Chapter 306 Money is a must. The death blow that Nanling expected did not happen, because the main gun of the starship had been damaged long ago, and various ship guns were also seriously damaged. There was no way to cause damage to the Jumton space station except self-destruction. But self-destruction, at this moment, the energy shield of the Jumton space station had also been restored. The high-energy shield began to close, and then like a powerful sickle, it quickly cut into the hull of the starship and cut off the head that had penetrated. Boom. The part outside the shield exploded directly, and the entire space station was slightly shaken. But with the shield restored, these explosions could not cause much damage to the space station. Instead, the bow of the starship fell off and fell to the ground with a boom. Then countless Ghost C combat units emerged from the go. Now Nanling is sure that these genetically modified people are cannon fodder for the Ghost C. They don't seem to have any self-thinking ability, and they only know to rush in all directions without caring about their lives. They will destroy everything they see, which seems to depend only on the last order they get. The pressure on the Funlim building soon became less severe, because the Jumton space station itself has a relatively large architectural pattern, and the streets around the building are wide and there is no complicated terrain. And these combat units do not seem to have any powerful long-range attack weapons, and ordinary energy guns cannot penetrate the high-quality outer wall of this building. Therefore, the people in the building only need to arrange three-dimensional defenses at the windows of the ground floor and the second floor to defend themselves. There were explosions everywhere around, and many buildings were destroyed in this chaos. The mechanical guards on the space station finally restarted and began to fight back on the ground. However, in the process of counterattack, it is inevitable that some damage will be caused, which will lead to the destruction of a large number of buildings and countless losses. This is equivalent to a street fight in which the host is the guest. The soldiers of the Ghost C, in turn, used the various buildings and terrains of the space station to deal with the mechanical guards. And the mechanical guards are actually a little cautious when they need to consider the personal safety of the residents of the space station. Fortunately, there were a lot of robot guards, and they could come off the production line in an endless stream, which made the situation under control. But casualties inevitably occurred, and they appeared in large numbers. It seemed that because the authorities finally issued a killing order to the robot guards, civilians were no longer the amulets of the Ghost Sea warriors, so the civilians caught in the middle became the most miserable group of people. Oh, in fact, those who can settle in the Jumton space station are not civilians. If they are placed outside, they are at least wealthy people. And such people did not even have the qualifications to buy their lives in this war. They died directly under the guns of the Ghost Sea biochemical soldiers or their own robot guards. If someone can inherit their property, it's fine. If not, then I'm sorry, their property can only be confiscated as a public property of the federal parliament, and contribute to the construction of the federation. A lot of people died. Fanny sighed in silence, feeling a little bit reluctant, but in the end she did nothing. Because she knew how much capacity they had. Even if Nanling could make the emergency plan reach double digits, they could only defend themselves with their resources. At this time, the whole building was filled with all kinds of life. Some people were worried, as if they were worried about the safety of their families. Some people were already crying, as if they had received bad news. Others were extremely grateful that they stayed in this building at this critical time. This building had a magical boss team, who could actually face those terrible Ghost Sea biochemical soldiers head-on, making them safe and secretly grateful. At least for the Fanolin building, it has entered a stalemate stage. But there was still fighting outside. Nanling glanced outside and said, "It looks like it will take some time to restore law and order. We need to settle the people in this building and give them some supplies to ensure their survival." Li Ji nodded and said, "Okay, I've opened your emergency plan No. 4. You are really well prepared." Upon hearing this, Fanny's beautiful eyes rolled around, and then she said to Gao, "The job of distributing supplies to the people stranded in this building is left to you. Don't let them make trouble, understand?" Cao accepted the order with a solemn expression. "Yes, miss, I will ensure that the task is completed." Fanny nodded, and then said to Li Ji, "From now on, this kind of chores will be left to Cao. I believe he can do a good job." Then he said to Mo, draw up a contract for him, and write down the reward and punishment measures clearly. We will do things according to the rules. Cow said calmly, no, miss, I'm your follower, and I don't need any contract to restrict me. Fanny said, of course I understand the reason, but if I don't write it clearly in the contract, what if I forget to pay you? Just one sentence made Cow feel different. Mo had quickly prepared the contract and sent it to Cow. She said, take a look at it yourself. If there is no problem, sign it. Cow signed it without even looking at it. He regarded it as a test from Fanny, so he would sign it even if the conditions were harsh. After signing, he was surprised to find that his annual salary was actually at the million level. This did not include the bonus clauses. If he took all the bonus clauses, he could even get an annual salary of tens of millions. Nanling was quite jealous, because his contract was only half of this. Although his bonus clauses might be more, the basic salary was a face. Mo saw his awkwardness almost at a glance, and said with a smile, you are now a shareholder who directly participates in the dividends, why are you still arguing with others about these things? Nanling pouted and said nothing, but he was still unhappy. Dividends are dividends, and if there are dividends, the salary can be waived. How can there be such a boss? He had no idea that he was already a boss. Fanny waved her hand impatiently and said, okay, since you handle this matter so well, I'll give you a raise, okay? Why are you acting like a child? She seemed very impatient. But Nanling was very touched. He said, the boss is generous. Mo shook his head helplessly and secretly sent a message to Fanny, don't you also love him? Fanny said, am I loving him? I really can't stand his rogue face. Besides, you know this guy's temper. What if he feels that he doesn't get paid enough and doesn't work hard for me? It actually makes so much sense. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 307. A time when no one can cook. In addition to Cow, who became the professional CEO at Funlean Weapons Company with an annual salary of 1 million, Nanling also hired a clerk. He was a very principled man. He did not ask Fanny for more salary, but only increased it by 200,000 on the basis of the original 500,000. Then the 200,000 was handed over as another person's salary. That's right, he also started to hire subordinates, that is, the waiter Lianao who was willing to risk his life to report to him. Nanling found that Lianao was very smart and knew a lot about the situation of the entire Federation. He should be a very capable person. In this way, you are my employee. I also have a restaurant in this building. You can be the manager for me. Lianao said gratefully. Yes, boss. Nanling immediately had a subtle feeling. Is it so pleasant to be called boss? No wonder Fanny did not insist on him changing his words. This guy is too cunning. After some explanation, the already excellent order of the whole building was raised to another level. In this building, whether it is sad people or people who are grateful, they naturally feel more at ease after getting enough supplies. Because this is a food court, many merchants simply took out some of the food that is not easy to preserve from their warehouses and cooked it for the stranded guests in the building for free. This approach is obviously very popular, and the stranded guests are also very moved. The atmosphere has finally improved a lot. However, the mechanical guards have been maintaining public order for nearly 3 days. Almost the entire urban area of the space station was destroyed, so the alert level was lowered. This also means that everyone in the space station does not have to face the accidental injury of the mechanical guards. The stranded people in the building also left here one after another. They always want to go home to take a look. What if their home is still there? Looking at the deserted building, Nanling asked the local boss Lianao. The order is being restored too slowly. Can you tell what went wrong? Lianao didn't expect to face this problem. After hesitating for a moment, he said, they are still arguing. After all, restoring order requires resources. I'm afraid they haven't agreed on how to distribute the resources. Nanling covered his face and said, can this really be done this way? However, he soon realized that in the minds of those federal congressmen and the forces behind them, the special zone was probably not a very important matter. He sighed. I can foresee that this special zone will soon be deserted after this incident. After all, in his opinion, a large number of rich people died. However, Lianao shook his head and said, no, the Fanxing special zone may even become more prosperous because of this incident. Nanling asked, "Why is that?" Li now said, "Because the other star regions under the jurisdiction of the Federation are all controlled by their own forces, and every important position in those places is occupied by someone. People with ambitions have no chance at all in a place where the class has been completely solidified. The only way is to sharpen your brains and come to the special zone. This special zone is the intersection of power in the entire Federation. More importantly, it will not be monopolized by any force, which means that there are always enough opportunities to climb up. This point alone is enough to attract talents from the entire Federation." Nanling said in surprise. "So, the Starry Special Zone is actually an outlet for the internal conflicts of the Federation. So if you make a name for yourself here, what can you achieve?" Liu said. "There are two paths to take here. The first path is the practitioner gym route. If you are confident, you can come to the special zone to try to challenge the gym. At the time, someone will naturally offer you fame and fortune. The ultimate of this path is to establish a sect and become the leader of a sect, and from then on enjoy the respect and worship of all forces. The other path is the Shable money route. Money opens the way to get the support of some congressmen to expand the size of their own Shable. The most common development in this process is that as the Shable becomes larger and larger, it forms a guard force of sufficient size. This is the predecessor of the warlord. Then continue to obtain the qualifications for formal military formation through the support of congressmen, so that you can become a real warlord. And the warlord goes a step further and can have his own political capital and pass it on in an orderly manner. That is the clan." Li paused for a moment before saying, "If there are clans that have their own cultivation heritage and their descendants prosper, then they can become top clans, that is, the 6 surnames." After hearing this, Nanling suddenly understood the situation of the Star Federation. He thought it was really interesting. The system of the Star Federation was simply born to continuously incubate clans. He smiled and shook his head, then said to Liao, "Forget it, this kind of thing has little to do with this. You are my store manager now. Have you thought about what business to start?" Liao. He thought Nanling had already made up his mind, but he didn't expect that he had to think about this kind of thing himself. Seeing that he looked completely lost, Nanling also said several names of dishes in a bad mood. He said, "Then just make these dishes into the daily menu. These are the foods that his system likes to eat in the Star Federation." He is making the menu completely according to his wife's taste. Li now understood what he said, and immediately started to search for the recipes of these dishes online. However, this operation scared him, and then he said, "Boss, something big has happened." Nanling hurriedly asked, "Could it be that the people from the Ghost Sea have made a comeback?" Liu shook his head and said, "No, but maybe for most people in the special zone this is a more serious matter." Nanling asked, "What is this?" Liu said with a serious expression, "I can't find any recipe, not even any recipe." Nanling looked over in confusion and asked, "So what?" He obviously had not yet realized the seriousness of the problem. Liu now said, "In the Star Federation, ordinary people cook with smart machines according to authorized recipes. And these authorized recipes are loaded online to prevent infringement by cracking, and no files will be left in the black box device of smart cooking. But now all these authorized recipes are gone. That means those smart cooking machines have really become useless stupid boxes, and everyone needs to eat." Nanling's expression was also slightly moved after hearing this and said, "But the recipes will come back eventually, right?" Liu now said, "But this requires a process, and this will be a very painful process for the residents of the entire special zone." Nanling only realized after hearing this that people in this era do not have the skills to cook by themselves. There are too many things to learn, and they have long been accustomed to handing over such low-level affairs to smart machines. But now, he checked. My goodness, there is not even a basic method of processing ingredients. The copyright control is really good. But because of this, everyone is miserable. Chapter 308 Becoming an Internet Celebrity. Nanling felt quite embarrassed about the current situation of the Federal District. After all, he was the one who crashed the network. So he began to worry about this group of guys who couldn't cook, and browsed the network to see the actual situation. Well, it was a mess. Because the server was down for too long before, the entire network is now blank. This is a complete cleansing. Those who have deposits are very uncomfortable. Their deposit information is also on the network, but now it is gone. Of course, there are also backups of deposit information on their personal terminals, but that requires the bank system to return to normal before it can be restored. In other words, most people are now in a state of poverty. Fortunately, Nanling finally saw the emergency plan put forward by the Parliament. That is to distribute emergency supplies to each family and each person according to the individual's online application to help everyone get through the difficulties. The inefficient federal parliament finally made a move to reassure the people. If the supplies are really distributed in this way, at least they can get through the difficulties. Then he looked at the list of items in the emergency supplies bag. He found that there were quite a lot of things, including meat, rice, vegetables, and fruits, as well as some other food seasonings. The things were quite complete. But for people of this era, how to deal with these ingredients was the most difficult thing. In the past, these things were just raw materials in their eyes. They bought them and threw them into the smart kitchen, and everything could be solved. But now, they don't even know how to cook. Yes, the federal parliament also thoughtfully prepared a lot of flour, because many people don't like rice but like pasta. But I guess many people are staring at these ingredients now, right? Nanling thought about it and finally decided to do something. He could only take care of himself when he was poor, so he would look at everything from money. But now he has achieved financial freedom, and his heart has softened a lot. This may be if you are poor, you should take care of yourself, and if you're rich, you should help the world. Nanling thought of a good idea, and after thinking about it, he thought it should still be feasible, so he told his sister and his wife about his idea. The elder sister's wife was open to this. She said, "You can decide on this matter yourself. You are free anyway. By the way, you can ask Miss King Fei for help. Although she has a bad temper, she is definitely a professional in this area." Nanling thought it made sense, so he went to find concubine Yu King Fei. However, when he told her his intention, the impatient concubine Yu King Fei directly refused. "No, I won't do this kind of thing. How can I, the legitimate daughter of the Gu family, teach people to cook?" She was very disgusted with this. Nanling was frustrated, which was an unexpected result. However, it didn't matter if he was frustrated, but Moat blamed herself. She felt that Nanling was wrong because of her suggestion. So she pulled Fanny over unceremoniously and said, "Your adopted sister has been angered by Xiaonan, and you, as a sister, have to be responsible for paying the debt." Fanny blinked at the time, and the word flesh compensation appeared in her mind for some reason. But she quickly shook her head to get rid of those unhealthy thoughts, hugged Mo and said, You only know how to help your husband speak and bully others, don't forget that I am going to be your wife." Mo, who had mastered the thunder control technique to the maximum level, felt that she was burned on the outside and tender on the inside. "You are used to such fierce words, right?" Nanling thought it was quite interesting. He said, "Sister, just agree to her. She looks so pitiful." Fanny nodded repeatedly and gave Nanling a look of "good brother, good job." Nanling was stunned at the time. It really felt like he was serving as a wingman with his good buddy. The only problem was that he was now helping his good buddy flirt with his wife. What a damn plot. Nanling was also stunned. But fortunately, the three of them quickly focused their attention on other things, that is, the public welfare video that Nanling mentioned. Fanny said cheerfully, "Why not make a video? Just like broadcast, and answer the audience's questions on the spot." Mo was a little nervous. "We have never done this kind of thing. There won't be any problem, right?" Fanny said, "What can be the problem? If Gu King Fei, that little waste, can do it, why can't we? Don't say so much, just do it this way, we are doing good things and meritorious deeds." Nanling suddenly felt that since Fanny joined in, how could this matter change? Could it be that she was so enthusiastic just because she thought it was fun? Just like that, a program video called Master Shionan's Cooking Class appeared on the internet, and immediately received official attention and was pinned to the top of the promotion. The name of this program was given by Fanny, and she thought it was fun. And this program is a mixture of recorded broadcast and live broadcast. Anyway, Nanling just tells all the little cooking knowledge he knows, and after the live broadcast, Li Ji will immediately help edit the relevant content into a video for people to watch again. This series of programs immediately became a hit in the Star Special Zone. Countless people wait for the program to be updated or the live broadcast to start every day. Because it not only taught them the knowledge to live a good life in the present, but also two beauties with different styles, it seems a bit wrong to focus on the relationship before and after, but one thing is undeniable. Both beauties have become famous, and they are very famous. One of the most impressive examples is that Master Shionan asked his two assistants to demonstrate the tutorial of cooking white rice. As a result, the big red-haired beauty was so clumsy that she burned the rice in a hurry and burned the only pot by the way. It can be called a kitchen killer. Then came the practical teaching. Master Shionan and his wife quickly showed what hands-on ability is. They actually dismantled the kitchen smart devices that everyone had on the spot, and then took out the pots they needed from them. For example, Master Shionan was teaching how to make bread dumplings through video. As a result, the clumsy Miss Fanny not only scattered flour all over the place, but also set a fire in the space full of flour dust. As a result, the whole kitchen exploded. Miss Fanny, who had a lot of health, was fine, but Miss Mo and Master Shionan, who cleaned up the mess afterwards, were in a miserable state. All these interesting things were made into videos and posted online, which can be said to be entertaining and educational. After all, Fanny is too talented. She can actually interpret the common and uncommon dangers in the kitchen. I don't know if she is really lucky or intentional. Anyway, her video was specially edited to make an issue of kitchen safety operation specifications. And Fanny became a star as she wished, but she is just a comedian. As for Nanlin, he originally just wanted to promote the traditional dishes he knew in his previous life, but he didn't expect to become an internet celebrity. Chapter 309. People forced into a corner. What does it feel like to be a popular anchor on the internet? It's nothing special. Anyway, he never thought about making money from it. At first, he just wanted to make up for it. He wanted to let people in the federal district who couldn't cook at least know how to make some simple meals to live. Then he decided to take this opportunity to promote the ancient cuisine he was familiar with. For example, the most popular dish in his recipes now is dumplings. Because it only requires flour, meat and vegetables, and the whole family can do it together, it is very suitable for family activities. In this era of cold social relations, it is inexplicably very popular. Then it is egg noodles. Because it is simple and easy to make, it is the first choice of lonely travelers. In fact, the top 10 are almost all simple dishes, and the ones outside the top 10 are big dishes such as braised pork, sweet and sour spare ribs, big sauce ribs, steamed fish, and grilled fish. After all, the cooking process of these dishes is slightly complicated, and Nanling obviously overestimated the cooking skills of people in this era. They haven't cooked for themselves for too long. Even if they can make all kinds of accidents by following the script, it's too difficult to make it as delicious as Nanling. So everyone gradually envied Miss Fanny, who didn't look very smart. She obviously can't do anything, and she feels like she's always making things worse, but she eats more than anyone else. It's so enviable. It was in this context that Nanling's younger brother Liu finally thought of how to run Nanling's restaurant. He first changed the name of the restaurant to Chef Nan's Kitchen, and then let Nanling shoot every live broadcast and video here. And every time the dishes are cooked, in addition to being tasted by Mo and Fanny, they will also give some to the diners who come to the restaurant. This has become the best advertisement. There is nothing delicious in the space station now, and everyone is a wealthy person with a small amount of assets, so going to the restaurant has become the norm. In addition, during the current special period, the performance at the Funlim building in the previous chaos was eye-catching, which made many people willing to come to this building for dining, and it was impossible to book a seat at the Master Nan's kitchen without an appointment. In this way, the Funlim building has become the dining sanctuary of the entire Jumton space station, and Nanling has also earned a large amount of private money. After all, the money earned by the Master Nan's kitchen can all go into his personal pocket. His sister Mo is good in this way. She never cares how much private money he has, but she has recently started to check his transaction records frequently. Well, she is just worried that he will spend money recklessly again. Just when the situation was good, Nanling suddenly received a communication from Lulai again. He said in surprise, "Brother, why did you think of me? Is there something I need your help with?" He actually hit some guesses about the purpose of Lulai's communication this time. After all, Lulai said that he was currently stationed in the Fanxing Special Zone, but in fact he could only be regarded as a general of a small army of the Lu family. His level might be the same as Miss Fenyi's command of the White Feather 6th Fleet. And such a fleet, if it wants to face an enemy like the Ghost Sea independently, it may not be able to do it, right? However, Lulai's words surprised Nanling. He said, "Brother Nan, I heard that you're very famous recently. Many of my friends are now using your recipes to cook. I didn't expect you to have such talent." It was actually a joke. It seems that the situation on his side is not very urgent. Nanling smiled and replied, "Thank you for the compliment, brother. I just want to make everyone's life more interesting at this time." Lulai reminded, "By the way, remember to register the copyright of your dishes to avoid causing trouble." Nanling shook his head and said, "No need. What I told everyone are all dishes that have existed since ancient times. How can they be registered under my name alone? I just dug these recipes out of the pile of old papers. It can't be considered my invention. How can I register the copyright? Perhaps Lu Lai would think that Nanling was pretending to be noble, but for Nanlin, promoting these familiar dishes in this world again, he already had a sense of satisfaction that money couldn't buy. Lu Lai didn't want to talk to Nanling about this, he just said, "Brother, I have failed this time, but it's not that serious. So at this time, I have to ask you for help again." Nanling immediately patted his chest and said, "Brother, just tell me, I will help if I can." Lu Lai said a little embarrassedly, "The main reason is that the authorization I bought from your company before has been used up. Can I buy some more?" Nanling immediately said, "It's nothing, just tell me how much you want." Lu Lai seemed even more embarrassed, he said, "But I don't have any spare money." Nanling asked curiously, "Is your fleet out of funds?" Lu Lai was silent for a while, he smiled bigly. "Yes, there is no funds, because my family thinks it's not worth wasting resources for a fleet that has already been decided to be sacrificed." Nanling asked in surprise, "Why is that so?" Lu Lai said, "Because only when my fleet is destroyed, my Lu family can naturally start to pass the buck and force other forces to participate together to preserve the family's strength and not suffer too much loss." Nanling said in surprise, "But you defended the Fanxing special zone, so can't this be considered a merit?" Lu Lai said, "This is of course a great merit for the federal parliament, but for the Lu family," Nanling added, "it can't be considered worthless, right?" Lu Lai said, "I defended the defense line, which is indeed a merit, but I also destroyed the original network of the special zone and let a battleship in to damage the Juntan space station. This is not something that can offset the merits and demerits. It is even easy for other families to seize the handle to attack the Lu family. So if my fleet is annihilated in this battle, then others will lose the handle to attack my family, and even according to the rules, they will have to make up for it with certain resources. And my men and I will become victims of the greater interests of the family. This is also helpless. It is indeed helpless, because for those who really hold high power, people like Lu Lai, like the sergeants in a fleet, are just special resources that can be used to exchange chips at any time like equivalents." "What a rotten smell." A sneer suddenly came from the side. It was Fana who quietly appeared beside him. Nanling had expected this, so he didn't look surprised. He just asked, "Why are you here?" Fana said with a serious expression, "I just came to ask you about your work content today." She swallowed her saliva suddenly. Is she here to ask what to cook for her later? Nanling was sometimes speechless. Isn't this his wife's wife? Why does he have to feed her? Fana looked at Lu Lai in the communication again and said indifferently, "Since it's a friend who needs help, then we will help. Don't worry about the copyright fee, just use it, and you can pay it later when you have money. By the way, we still have some copyrights of the 3-point return to origin cannon. Do you need it? After all, you have to rely on your own strength to defend it now. This is your only way out now." Lu Lai was quite moved when he heard this. He knew that this was really his only chance, and Fanny and Nanling were the only ones who helped him in his time of need. Chapter 310. Hot Pot Tonight. Lu Lai ended the communication with gratitude. This time, he not only got an opening authorization contract for 3 series of concept firearms without counting, but also got an authorization contract for the whole set of 3-element system. In fact, the 3-element system cannot increase the lethality much more than the conventional naval guns. But if Lu Lai's fleet has 3-element cultivators of thunder, wind and fire that meet the requirements of the 3-element system, then these 3-element cultivators can bloom with amazing lethality. A set of 3-element system 3-point return cannon can burst out with a lethality close to the main cannon bombardment of the main starship. More importantly, the 3-element system does not need cooling and charging like the main cannon. In other words, it can be regarded as a continuous main cannon made by using the power of 3-element cultivators. The role that this level of weapon can play in interstellar war can be imagined. Nanling did not feel how special the weapon system he discovered was, and even Fana did not care too much, but Lu Lai obviously realized the strength of this system. He therefore regarded it as his only life-saving straw. Nanling said with emotion, "I'm afraid that my brother Lu can only charge forward now, because his retreat has been cut off by the Lu family he came from. If the Lu family could show some humanity, Lu Lai would not act so miserable and desperate." Even though he still looked very decent in front of Nanlin, the trapped look in his eyes could not be hidden from Nanlin. Fana said, "Don't complain to me about this. You'd better think about how to explain to Mo quickly." If she finds out that we have done so many good things and borrowed so many resources from others, she will nag again. Nanling looked at her strangely and said, "Boss, you are so afraid of Sister Mo's nagging, but you still like to be with her." Fanny glared at him unhappily and said, I am kind enough to help you with the things, but you actually alienate the relationship between me and Mo?" Nanling's mouth twitched and said, "Okay, I just think that Sister Mo is so cute when she is nagging seriously." "Why are you afraid of her nagging?" Fanny. Her. Nanling immediately taught her, "You have to face Sister Mo's nagging with a loving and tolerant attitude. How can you show an impatient look?" Fanny. Her. "Are you teaching me how to conquer Mo?" Nanling reached out and knocked her on the head and said, "I'm teaching you how to make Mo happy." After he finished the action, he was stunned for a moment, feeling a little uneasy. After all, this was the boss's head, and he just hit it like that. However, Fanny just rubbed her head and had no intention of getting angry. Instead, she continued to ask humbly, "But what if she keeps nagging?" Nanling was shocked. He found that his boss might have been used to being hit on the head since he was a child, so he might think that this is a normal way of getting along. He was shocked. How much sin must she have done when she was a child to get used to this way of getting along? "But I have to say, this red and furry head is really exciting to hit," he said. "Mo keeps nagging you, that's because every time she says something, you always say something back. How can you make her stop? Look at me, I never talk back to her, I always say yes to whatever she says. Do you see her nagging me?" Fanny snorted coldly. "Dogleg, licking dog." Nanling said with a TSK sound. "If I treat her well but she ignores me, then I am a licking dog. I treat her well and she treats me well, this is called mutual affection." Fanny suddenly thought of something, and said meaningfully, "But many times, you are also very good to me." Nanling immediately said, "You pay me a salary, so what's wrong with me being nice to you? It's purely a money transaction between us." Fanny was in a trance for a moment, looking at Nanling's self-righteous and shameless look. She really had no idea what to do. She pointed at him angrily, then turned around and walked out. As a result, when she walked to the door, she suddenly remembered something, turned her head and instantly put on a smile and asked, "Master Shionen, what are we going to eat tonight?" She looked like a real licking dog. Men with cooking skills are so popular. Nanling laughed and said, "Okay, I'm going to keep it simple tonight, let's have a hot pot." When Fanny heard this, she jumped up happily and said, "I like this, I'll help prepare it," she said and skipped away. As a firebender, she has no resistance to hot pot. If Mo's favorite is the delicious fish head soup that Nanling made for him, then Fanny's favorite is hot pot. Nanling watched her leave without telling her that this was discussed in advance by Mo. This guy is heartless and easily arrogant. If she knew that she was so favored, I'm afraid her tail would be up to the sky, and who knows what kind of moth she would come up with. He personally handled the contract with Lulai and sent it to him before getting up to prepare dinner. Now he has long stopped teaching new dishes, but even so, every time he only needs to live broadcast the content of him preparing dinner in his own store to attract full traffic. After all, the network of this special zone has undergone a whitewashing restart. During the period of network recovery, all previous traffic is equal to zero. In that case, the people from all over the country are probably concerned about the content that is closely related to their own survival. There are many similar survival anchors, and Master Shionen's cooking class is the best among them, the existence of top streamers. Now many families in the entire Star Special Zone have developed a habit, that is, watching Nanling's live broadcast at mealtime. It seems that in this way, the pig food they eat can be blessed and become much more fragrant. After watching more, everyone also discovered the relationship between the three main characters in this program. Among them, the male protagonist Nanling and the goddess Mo are husband and wife. They often give candy to people out of the blue. The sweetness that comes from the bones can always make people sick. Although the comedian Fanny, who always has various problems, is also a big beauty, her silly look is too down to earth. It looks like a little pet raised by the fairy couple. Everyone was a little confused about the relationship between the three people. It seemed like one dragon and two phoenixes, but Nanling's eyes were always clear when looking at Fan and I, which was completely different from the warm and sweet look when looking at Mo. Although Fan and I and Nanling showed excellent tacit understanding, the familiar feeling was like that of long-time friends, rather than the things between men and women. At this time, the live broadcast started again. Everyone watched Fan and I trying to help Nanling everywhere, but she clumsily knocked over a plate. She wanted to help Mo, who was cleaning vegetables, but ended up getting wet all over. The barrage said happily, You think this Miss Fanini is the daughter adopted by Master Nan and Goddess Mo? It's really possible, otherwise who can stand this clumsy and useless young lady? Fanini could also see these barrages, but she didn't care at all. She didn't really rely on this to make a living. She was a real young lady who always relied on her own abilities to make a living. Just like now, when the hot pot was ready, she stood in front of Nanling with her ice bowl, and he immediately made room for her. His wife was discharged from the hospital, and he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Chapter 311a. Smile that cannot be lost. The live broadcast of the side dish stage has ended. This process also allows the audience to learn a lot of useful basic knowledge about food processing. It can be said that Nanling has done a good job of spreading knowledge in every live broadcast. It's just that his knowledge seems low-end in the eyes of people of this era. Next is the live broadcast of dinner time. According to the rules, they will choose some lucky guests to dine together in Master Nan's kitchen. This is also the reason why Master Nan's kitchen can be so popular. But this lucky guest is a little strange. When he saw Nan Lin, he directly stretched out his hand and shook hands and said, "Hello, Master Nan, I'm Wang He from Toshizai. I'm glad to meet you." Nanling smiled when he heard it. "We are still in the same industry." "Hello, Mr. Wang." He didn't have much special expression, and he really didn't know who this Wang He was. However, what he didn't notice was that there was already a turbulent discussion on the bullet screen in the live broadcast room. Countless people spoke there to remind Master Nan, "Be careful, this Wang He is not a good person." Toshizai seems to have taken a fancy to Master Nan's traffic. Master Nan joined Toshizai. Isn't this also good? There are more resources for promotion. What do you know? What is Toshizai? It is a catering giant that has taken over half of the catering industry in the special zone. If Master Nan joins Toshizai, do you think we can still get these recipes easily? That's right. Think about paying copyright fees to this company every time we cook. This is a headache. Wait, Master Nan disassembled several smart food processors produced by Toshizai in the live broadcast. Could he be looking for trouble? It's possible. Anyway, this time it's a big trouble. Either Master Nan is in trouble or we will be in trouble in the future. The information in the live broadcast barrage was refreshed quickly, and many people had already sensed that something was going to happen. Sure enough, the next moment Wang He smiled and said, "Master Nan, do you know that our company can actually sue you?" Nanling raised her eyebrows and asked, "Why?" Wang He said, "Because you dismantled our company's smart food processor during the live broadcast, which has caused us a lot of trouble." Nanling said calmly, "I didn't violate any of your intellectual property rights. I just didn't have the right tools at the time and used materials on the spot." Wang He said, "No, I didn't accuse Master Nan of doing anything wrong. It's just that such a video will inevitably cause some bad guidance to users after it is broadcast. In fact, our company's marketing this month is indeed declined a lot." Nanling frowned. At this time, the barrage had exploded again. What a joke, you have to trouble Master Nan for such a thing. I think the sales of the smart food processor should not be bad, right? At least I ordered 2 more after dismantling the one at home. Me too, I dismantled one to get the cooking tools and immediately ordered another one. You can always find excuses to accuse someone of a crime. Nanling looked at the comments in the live broadcast room and found it quite funny. Li He on the other side of the table felt that it was his turn to perform. He stood up and said directly, "This Mr. Wang is here to make trouble, right? I just checked the marketing records of Toshizai this month, and the sales of smart food processors have more than tripled. If you are here to make trouble, then please leave. We will invite another lucky guest." As the manager of the store Master Nan's kitchen, Li He still has a sense of ownership. However, Wang He was very cold to Li He, and didn't even look at him, as if he felt that this person was completely unqualified to talk to him. He just said to Nan Lin, "Master Nan, or Mr. Nan Lin, I am here on behalf of Toshizai to invite you to sign a contract. As long as you can become a member of our Toshizai, then as the executive president of Toshizai, I can promise you that I will definitely provide you with the best resources to make you a real top streamer in the Star Federation." Nanling suddenly laughed after hearing this, and he seemed to have heard a very funny joke. Wang He obviously understood the meaning of the laughter, and then his face became a little serious and said, "It seems that Mr. Nanling is unwilling to cooperate, so we can only talk about things that are not so pleasant," he said. "Including the hot pot that Mr. Nan is making now, the copyright has been registered by our company. It is naturally okay for Mr. Nan to edit himself on weekdays, but it is best not to appear in the public eye like today, otherwise we reserve the right to sue. Nanling's eyebrows suddenly frowned when he heard it. Bang! Mo suddenly slapped the table. She was very quiet. It was just at this moment that everyone in the live broadcast room felt a bone-chilling chill. She was angry, very, very angry, because she knew how much Nanling loved these recipes full of classical characteristics. She loved eating Nanling's dishes because every time Nanling made these foods, he would always show a smile from the heart. So when she saw the smile on Nanling's face disappear, she was angry, extremely angry. I thought that the people in this space station, at least the middle level and above, should know that we are not good-tempered people, she said coldly. He felt a huge pressure in an instant, but he still managed to stay calm and speak, but at this moment, his body could no longer support his speech, because his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose began to bleed. His face was ferocious but he was speechless. Because at this moment he was under the pressure of another Jin and strong men. Over there, Fanny, who put down her bowl and chopsticks, also had a stern face and said coldly, "You don't need to say anything more, and I don't need to listen anymore. Sister Li, check what this Toshai's eye is like." The two Jindan ladies went crazy, which brought an extremely intense visual impact to the audience in front of the video. What is Fan like in their hearts? A heartless and clumsy girl. What is Mo like in their hearts? The gentle big sister who can tolerate Nanling infinitely. But now, they all showed an extremely terrible expression. They were like aloof goddesses, queens in the world. They were all angry because Shidonan, who used to bring them ease and joy, lost his smile. This really made Nanling angry. The dishes he announced were all home-cooked dishes from his previous life. In his heart, he only hoped that these hometown dishes that had disappeared in this era could be spread again and passed down. He absolutely could not tolerate the fact that someone was making a profit from them. So he had already clenched his fists in anger and was about to think about how to vent his anger, but he didn't expect that Mo had already expressed her anger first, followed by Fan. The anger of the two of them instantly ignited the fighting spirit of the entire Zhuoxia team. He and the forces behind him will soon understand how terrible it is to anger this team. Chapter 312. Challenge. Nanling really didn't expect that he would encounter such a situation. What is going on in this era? Why do these ancient home-cooked dishes become the exclusive property of certain people? This time he was indeed careless. If he had known earlier, he would have listened to Lulai's advice and registered the copyright in advance, and then all the licensing fees would have been waived. He was very angry in his heart. Even if Mo and Fanny were angry for him, he was still very angry. At this time, Li Ji had already said calmly, "Toshai's Eye, its parent company is Star Food First. In addition to large terminal food sales companies such as Toshai's Eye, there are also many resource collection companies that squeeze food raw material producers on many administrative stars. In addition to the catering industry, this Food First is also involved in the fields of biological agents and even biological weapons. It is a new business star in the Star Federation." Nanling felt the gazes from Mo and Fanny, and he knew that they were waiting for him to make a decision. Nanling was very moved by this. He decided to suppress his personal preferences so as not to affect other people because of personal reasons. So he showed Mo a tolerant smile, meaning, "Don't worry about him, just deal with it according to your ideas." Mo got his eyes and turned to look at the local Snape Liao and asked, "We are not locals in the Federation. If you locals deal with this kind of dispute, what methods do you have to resolve the differences?" Liao was asked, and looked at Wang He, who was bleeding from all 7 orifices and looked even more depressed, and felt frightened. He didn't expect that his boss's wife would be so fierce. He beat people half to death when he disagreed with them, and even didn't give the other party the right to speak. Seeing the boss's wife asking at this time, Liao immediately said seriously, "To answer the boss's wife, we federal people usually try to communicate with each other to see if we can settle this kind of dispute privately." Mo looked cold and glanced at him. Miraculously, Liu immediately realized that the boss lady was not satisfied with his answer. He did not dare to dwell on this point for long, and then said, "Another way is to invite the federal judiciary to intervene, and then the federal court will make the judgment." Well, before he finished speaking, he already felt the eyes that seemed to be ready to stack people at any time. Liu could only say, "Another way is to ask federal congressmen to intervene and mediate. Generally, both sides will give face in this case." At this time, Fanny interrupted him impatiently and said, "Why do you always miss the point when you talk? Do we mean to reconcile with him? He has bullied us and you are still thinking about how to reconcile? Is there any way to solve the problem with fists? You should think of one quickly. At this time, I just want to beat him up. Nanling was stunned for a moment. He found that he was overthinking. If he wanted to make things more harmonious, he should do it himself. How could he let Fanny do it? And what's wrong with System O? Why does it feel a little wrong? Li Yana was cheered up after hearing this, and he quickly said, yes, the most common and simplest one is to challenge the gym. This kind of Shable forces will always have cooperating gyms. As long as they challenge these gyms, if they don't want to lose their partners, they must provide the gambling items on behalf of the gyms. Fanny nodded slightly after hearing this and said, that's more like it. Can we challenge them in any way? Li Yana shook his head and said, it is certain that the gyms that are worshipped by the Shables will fight for the Shables, but of course they can't challenge them all the time. 3 battles. Any gym can only accept 3 challenges or kick out battles on behalf of the Shable, and then it will be considered to have fulfilled its duty of worship and distanced itself from the matter. Mo asked again. Then if no gym is willing to fight for them, what should we do with them? Li Yana said, generally speaking, when no gym is willing to fight for it, then it will almost lose its core competitiveness and completely become a weak player in this federal business circle. Here, boss lady, what else do you want to do with it? Mo shook her head somewhat dissatisfied. Then they fell silent. It seemed that some things could not be said clearly in the live broadcast. But Fanny didn't care about that. She said, you want to challenge the gym, right? Then let's go and challenge the gym first. Li Ji immediately said, okay, there are 2 gyms sponsored by Toshizai. Fanny stood up and walked out without saying a word, and said, send me the address and leave the food with me. You guys continue to eat. I'll be back soon. Good guy, he started to pretend. Mo stood up at the same time and said, I'll go too. It's just right that we are one family each. We can quickly finish the battle and come back to wheat. Why is she like this now? Nanling said that he didn't quite understand, but he could feel that the 2 girls were seriously venting his anger for him. When the 2 fierce girls left, the pressure on Wang He suddenly eased, and he immediately stood up and wanted to escape. However, when he was only halfway up, he felt a huge pressure on his body, which was no less than the pressure that Fanny Mo had brought to him before. He froze up on the spot because of this. His muscles were frozen, making it impossible for him to continue to stand up, nor to relax and sit down. At this moment, Thongshi next to him walked over leisurely, stretched out his hand to press Wang He's shoulder and made him sit down. The usually taciturn Iron War Flame said calmly, since you were a lucky guest today, you must finish your meal before leaving. To be honest, I really admire your courage. You dare to talk to us like this. You know, we have tried to keep a low profile since leaving the ancient domain. I didn't expect that you would think that being low-key would be considered weak and vulnerable. Wang He felt the anger from the entire Zhuoxia team. He also realized one thing, that is, these people in front of him were probably not the kind of people who were willing to reason with him. This was a group of completely unreasonable, reckless men. At this time, there was an uproar in the live broadcast room. They never thought that they could see such a program. Originally, they thought they were watching a food program, but they didn't expect to see such grievances and hatreds. Then they thought that the food show would turn into a business war film, but now it has directly turned into a martial arts film of a door-to-door challenge. This is amazing. More importantly, the live broadcast was turned on, and Nanling put all of this on the table without any care. At this time, countless people requested to live broadcast the scene of the challenge, and they wanted to know how the challenge was carried out. Especially since Nanling sent out 2 delicate girls, it was very confusing. At this time, Cao, who was standing next to him, suddenly stepped forward and said to Nanling, Master Nan, just now Miss Li Ji sent a message that the network operator wanted to live broadcast the scene of the 2 ladies challenge. I wonder if you allow it. Nanling smiled and shook his head, looked at the crazy petition subtitles in his live broadcast room, and said, since our fans like to watch it, let them watch it. As he said that, 2 other sub-screens appeared directly in his live broadcast room, which was the entrances of the 2 gyms. However, Nanling suddenly realized a problem, that is, although the 2 gyms were both in Jumton Space Station, they were still some distance away from the Funlim building. There is a no-fly zone here, how can they get to the scene? Chapter 313 Unreasonable Challenge. Nanling was just worrying about whether the 2 ladies would spend a lot of time on the road, but he saw a flash of lightning and a flash of fire appear in the 2 pictures almost at the same time. He was familiar with this kind of light and shadow effect, isn't it the escape technique? It was really unexpected that they all used the escape technique to hurry on their way and succeeded. In other words, the so-called forbidden airspace of this space station is ineffective against the escape technique. Think about it, this area achieved by scientific and technological means can only block low-end forces, and cannot really touch those high-end forces. What's interesting is that the Star Federation is willing to spend a huge price to set up such a forbidden airspace with a low upper limit, but there is no explicit law that prohibits flying in the Juntan space station. From this phenomenon, Nanling suddenly discovered a deep logic of the Star Federation. That is, all rules are set for the weak, and the strong naturally enjoy privileges. Even if it seems that there are many rules, in fact, it is full of protection of the rights of the strong. Nanling vaguely saw this and had many ideas in his mind. However, he still informed the two people in the video of the live broadcast, and emphasized that they should just act strong and beautiful in front of the public, and not make themselves look bloody and messy. I don't know if they understood it or not. Anyway, one just said him, and the other complained that he was long-winded. At this time, some disciples of the gym in the two pictures rushed out at the same time, and they all looked at Mo or Fanny as if they were facing a great enemy. The two did not wear combat armor when they went out, and at this time, Yaxu Ling Kong actually had a sense of ethereal fairy. Mo seemed to be easy to talk to. She faced a group of trembling gym disciples and said calmly, "You should have known my intention." One of the gym disciples immediately stepped out and said, "Since you are here to challenge the gym, you must follow the rules." Mo said calmly, "How can I have time to go through that process? Take the knife." As the voice fell, a crescent-like arc blade suddenly popped out from the back of her hand. It was her Lingyu. This time she really used Lingyu as a knife. She slashed down directly on the head, and the terrifying electromagnetic field burst out, causing all the metal pendants on the disciples of the gym to jump continuously, as if they were about to break free from their restraints and fly towards the terrifying blade. How could these gym disciples who didn't even have the Jindan cultivation level face such a terrifying spiritual power full of concepts of shock, destruction, and penetration? And the people in the gym who were originally reserved and unwilling to show up finally couldn't help but show up. It was a gym owner who looked very dark-faced. This dark face was probably not his true nature. After all, anyone who encountered such a situation would have a dark face. The first thing he said when he appeared was, "Your wild girl is bullying too much." Mo heard this and immediately pressed down the Lingyu that gathered terrifying spiritual power. The blade constructed by thunder seemed invisible but actually hit spirit. Before the blade touched, the entire gym had already felt the cutting power of this terrifying electromagnetic blade. The entire gym seemed to have been chopped on the head, and a very obvious cut appeared from the plaque at the main entrance to the entire building behind. The cut was extremely smooth, but the atoms inside had been completely separated. However, the person who blocked the cut was safe and sound, which showed that Mo's control over the thunder spirit power had reached a very high level. She had not practiced the short knife she used to use for a long time. It was not because she was not good at training, but because she felt that she had been introduced to another realm of using the knife by Nanling. That is, holding the knife in the heart and using the spirit power as the blade, so wherever the knife passed, everything could be cut and not broken. The magic of using it lies in one's heart. For example, the gym owner who had come outside and drew his sword to block, faced with such a knife, he held the sword in his hand but didn't know how to resist. Then he felt a chill in his eyebrows, and a line of blood appeared from his eyebrows and ended at the bridge of his nose. And he only felt a sharp light passing through his body. Boom. Behind him, the entire building of the dojo was split open from the middle, and then flicked to both sides. How could a mortal match a blade that can cut atoms? The gym owner was also a Jindan cultivator, and naturally he could see the situation behind him clearly through his soul observation. Even at this moment, his own soul froze for a moment, as if he was going to be split apart. But then he realized something, and said with a sense of loss, "I lost, I am willing to let the fairy deal with me." He said only 2 sentences in total. The first sentence called Mo a wild girl, and the second sentence called her a fairy. This is strength. Mo waved her hand casually, and the crescent blade, which was bigger than her, flew back to the back of her hand, turning the tangible object into an invisible spirit, and turned into a crescent shape attached to the back of her hand. At this time, she was as light as a fairy in the Moon Palace, and said with some majesty and laziness, "From now on, I don't want to see your gym have anything to do with that food first." After the voice fell, she turned around and disappeared on the spot with a flash of lightning. The whole 2 sentences really showed the beauty and strength to the fullest. Even those who were watching the live broadcast were howling like ghosts and wolves, and were about to lick the screen. How could these people who had never been in contact with the circle of practitioners, especially the circle of genius practitioners, have ever seen such a scene? Mo's speed solved the problem, while Fanny's method was even more violent. She was not like Mo, who chopped down the head and faced to judge the winner immediately, but directly bombarded with the scorching light behind her. Her unreliable temperament and manic power made her like a moving natural disaster, almost razing the gym to the ground on the spot. The terrifying fire spells were overwhelming. These were all medium-level spells, but when Fanny used them, they had the lethality of high-level spells. Her concept blessing was one of them, and the excellent gift family inheritance itself was another important factor. What was more critical was that his wisdom core, auxiliary instrument and spirit furnace, these three pieces, when combined together, seemed to have special effects such as fast casting and enhanced casting. Nanling could see that although this young lady didn't seem to have any good stuff on her, her three-piece suit actually had a suit effect, which was an important factor in widening the gap. In fact, in his eyes, Fanny's opponent was much stronger than Mo's opponent. Mo's opponent was probably at the 3rd level of Jindan. Not bad, but not that great. Fanny's opponent was at least at the 5th level of Jindan, possibly the 6th level. But what did it matter? Even if the gym master was strong, he had no choice but to face Fanny's continuous spell attack. When Fanny suddenly realized something and suddenly gathered her overwhelming spell attack into a series of flaming sword beams from her fingertips, the gym master simply admitted defeat. He found himself encountering a monster. Not to mention the endless spiritual power, the extremely fast and powerful spell casting, and even the terrifying burning heat released by the sun wheel behind it, causing environmental damage, could be ignored. What really frustrated him was that Fanny suddenly realized the truth of simplifying the complex during the battle with him. Under the huge sense of frustration, he was already discouraged. Seeing this, Fanny also said, "I don't want to see your gym have any connection with food first, otherwise I will raise your gym to the ground." After the voice fell, she turned into a rainbow and fled, leaving only a mess on the ground. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 314 Unbearable. Fanny and Mo's challenge was really unreasonable. It was Toshizai who came to provoke them, but they directly attacked his superior Shueisha-an. More importantly, they did not follow that procedures at all. They did not even care about the content of the challenge. They just dragged him out and beat him up. It seemed so irritable that they offended everyone. But it was precisely because of this that the two dodgers that were kicked out left a lot of room for maneuver. Because what these dodgers value most is not this kind of superficial face, but the ownership of their own inheritance. The order here is that only after having an officially recognized inheritance can a dodger be established, and then open a sect to teach disciples. The dodger's livelihood is to provide high-end protection for large and small forces or individuals. Therefore, the foundation of the dodger is this officially recognized inheritance, and only the officially recognized inheritance can have credibility. In general, in this kind of challenge battle, the bet agreed by both parties often includes the dodger inheritance or part of the inheritance, so every challenge is a life and death battle for the dodger. However, Fanny and Mo just came over to fight and then ran away, without mentioning the stakes at all, which made the two gyms secretly relieved. At the same time, they also understood what the two meant, and thus made up their minds to cut off ties with Toshizai, to cut ties with Shui first, and never get involved in their affairs again. When Fanny and Mo returned to the dining table, the whole process only took about half an hour, which was very fast. But when Fanny came back, she found that Mo was already there. She said with some annoyance, "If I had known earlier, I would have realized the mystery of simplifying the complex earlier, otherwise I would have come back earlier than Mo." She always competed with herself in some strange places. Mo knew her too well, and immediately said, "My opponent is weaker, so I can come back early." "Okay, don't be angry there, come and eat something." Fanny was coaxed. Nanling looked at him and shook his head without saying anything, but quietly released the suppression on Wang He. His spiritual power is extremely powerful, even almost like a Jindan cultivator. How can Wang He withstand it? So when the suppression was released, he almost slid under the table. Nanling continued to eat and drink as if nothing had happened, and promoted the bad hobby of happy water. He also successfully attracted a group of new happy water lovers in the Federation. At this time, the barrage was actually completely unrelated to eating and drinking. Everyone was amazed at how ruthless the two confidantes of Master Xiaonan were. I'm dying, isn't this contrast too big? The gentle big sister picked up a knife to chop people, and the silly big-breasted girl suddenly became a violent spellcaster. How did this contrasting combination come together? Master Nan is amazing. How did he make these two amazing women become his confidantes? Don't you care about what Master Nan will do after he has completely killed Toshizai? I know Toshizai and the food behind it very well. They are not easy to deal with. The above, do you think if Master Nan was afraid of these things, would he still do this? I noticed that after the two fairies beat the people, they both mentioned food first directly. They didn't take Toshizai seriously at all. Netizens spoke enthusiastically, and they said the right thing about the mentality of the people in Zhuoxia. What's there to be afraid of? At worst, they can go back to Zhuoxia to fight guerrilla warfare. If that happens, then food first can forget about any normal business dealings. Zhuoxia can beat them to nothing. In this confrontation, Zhuoxia is the confidence in everyone's hearts. Moreover, this time, after Nanling got the support of the people around him, he had already put aside all thoughts of compromise. After everyone ate for a while and the matter continued to ferment on the internet, Nanling waved his hand and looked straight at the camera. Everyone knew that Nanling had something to say. He just stared at the camera calmly, and then said, "All of you who have come with me must be very curious about where I found so many novel dishes to teach you. In fact, these dishes are not novel. They are all home-cooked dishes that once existed. They are the food that our ancestors ate every day in the past. I made these into videos to teach you. In fact, I just want this ancient skill to return to thousands of households. It should not be cut off." At this point, he paused very heavily, and said sharply, "They are the property of all mankind, and should not be registered as so-called copyrights and profited by certain individuals or companies. What I hope to see is that everyone can have some homely and free options when they want to cook, instead of being taxed extra every time they eat. I even think that registering recipes as copyrights is a very ridiculous thing. If individuals in a civilization are taxed extra for eating, then this civilization is too ugly." He said this as if he was firing a mad cannon, blasting everyone at once, because today's human civilization is like this. The comments in his live broadcast room were silent for a moment, and then all kinds of noises began to appear. "Are you so noble? Trash who doesn't respect intellectual property rights. Come to think of it, no one would really choose to learn to cook by themselves just to avoid paying the meager copyright fee, right? We are already so tired every day, and it is too much to spend time on cooking. With all these things, it seems that the entire Star Federation has suddenly become his opponent." Nanling looked at the situation in the comment area, smiled playfully and said, "I didn't expect so many people to disagree with my idea. That doesn't matter, anyway, I think this is the right thing to do. We have checked all the gyms related to food first. This is the first step. We will challenge them one by one until this immoral thing is stopped." Nanling said it very seriously and firmly. So he finally said calmly, "Now the order in the special zone has been slowly restored, and it seems that there is no need to continue my live broadcast program. I have made videos of all the dishes I can cook and left them online. I hope that one day someone will jump out and accuse me of not cooking well. That will be the thing I am most happy to see. Now, my kitchen has to come to an end for the time being, because I have more important things to do. This is the first time in my life that I have found something that I am so eager to accomplish. Fortunately, there are always people around me who encourage and support me, which makes me feel that I am not a lonely unlucky person. Yes, I am very lucky." The words ended here. Nanling ended this and the last live broadcast. This may be just a small thing in the eyes of many people, but it really made Nanling feel uneasy. He couldn't stand this kind of thing. Chapter 315. Fighting our own people. The next morning, the Zhuoxia team was ready to go. Anyway, Fanny was ready to fight. "I think, how about we go and beat up this Yangtze Giant's eye first? It looks like he is playing with fire with a sword, which is simply a provocation to my Gi family." Fanny easily chose the first target. Li Ji immediately retrieved the information about Yangtze Giant's eye, and then said with some surprise, "You know what, Yangtze Giant's eye and Gi family are really inextricably linked." Fanny was surprised. She asked, "Could it be that one of the branches of Gi family was squeezed out by the main family?" Li Ji shook her head and said, "There is no way to find out. We can only be sure that this doctor called Yangtze Giant's eye still has some financial transactions with Gio every year. There must be more communications, but it cannot be traced." Fanny pondered for a while, suddenly frowned and said, I can't care so much, the words have been said, just beat them up. Very good, worthy of being Fanny who destroys the family, this may be her own industry. However, despite their aggressiveness, they still had to take public transportation and traveled for 2 hours to reach the location of the Yangtze Sword House. Along the way, they naturally faced the surprised looks of everyone. After all, who would wear gorgeous custom-made combat armor to take public transportation? Damn it, I feel like I'm being treated like a monkey. Fanny muttered. Thongcha said distressedly. I'm the one who dragged my feet and didn't comprehend the fire escape technique. This is the key. Li Ji will not participate in this kind of kick-out action, and Nanlin, Fanny and Mo have already mastered the escape technique to bypass the restricted air force field of this space station. Mo did not speak, she didn't care what happened. But Nanlin comforted him. It's nothing, anyway, our boss Fanny likes the feeling of being noticed. Thongchip turned his head to look at the eldest lady he followed, and then saw that the woman was indeed saying unhappy words, but in fact she was obviously happy. He was speechless, and felt much better. Nanling looked at everyone's attire, and suddenly had an idea. Speaking of which, it's a bit out of line for us to ride public transportation fully armed like this. And it seems that gym challengers are not wearing combat armor, saying that this is to respect ancient rituals. Although I don't know what the ancient ritual is, why don't we wear some classical Chinese clothes to travel, maybe it'll feel better. Fanny's eyes lit up, this suggestion is very much in line with her desire to show off. Even Mo was slightly surprised and nodded, just asking. Then what kind of classical Chinese clothes should we wear? Our human civilization has been moving towards the interstellar era for tens of thousands of years, and because different star regions have their own history and culture, how should we choose? Fanny said as a matter of course. Of course, we should wear the traditional costumes of our ancient domain. Nanling quickly searched for the traditional costumes of the ancient domain, then he was speechless. Isn't this a red spacesuit? After looking at it a few more times, he found that these costumes were either fleet uniforms or spacesuits, with a simple and clear science fiction style. Maybe there is a clear difference in Fanny's eyes, but in Nanling's eyes, isn't this just a more rustic science fiction and a newer science fiction? He couldn't stand it. So he said, okay, I'll make clothes for you. Well, Thongchip, you have a share, let's wear some clothes that match our status as cultivators. Fanny blinked, she felt a little strange but didn't know what was strange. Mo chuckled and said, this is really your way to solve the problem. Are you afraid that we will rush to buy clothes for you again, so you just make clothes for us to wear? You have your way. Nanling rolled his eyes. It's not the case at all. He just thinks it would be a waste if the two beautiful girls around him didn't wear handfer. His mind turned quickly, and with the help of the wisdom core, he began to draw up the design. At the same time, he began to search the private warehouse on the Zeudoxia, to see if there were any suitable spiritual materials in the warehouse that could be used to make clothes. He felt that he was really stupid. Why didn't he think of this earlier? He was used to the mechanical style of this era, so why did he forget the ancient style that he was familiar with? Unfortunately, although there were many spiritual materials in his warehouse, most of them were metal or suitable for mechanical parts, and he didn't find a suitable type. He could only think of another way, and he really thought of it. That is the spiritual silk used to transmit spiritual power inside some compact spiritual tools. These spiritual silks are not made of a single material, but are formed by drawing after mixing multiple spiritual materials. A single strand is very thin and has good toughness but is very easy to be cut. When a spiritual tool is used, a spiritual thread made of 10 spiritual silk strands is generally used as a channel for spiritual power transmission. What Nanling has to do now is to try whether he can weave a brocade with spiritual silk. He also wants to try whether he can directly arrange rooms during the weaving process to make it spiritual. In short, he has a lot of ideas at this moment, and he has even placed an order to buy a large number of spiritual silks to go back and try. Mo had set up a monitoring alarm for Nanling's account. She was stunned, then turned her head with a complicated expression and looked at Nanling and said, you spent 4 million Lingzhu points in one go this time. Is that almost all the revenue of Master Nan's kitchen in recent times? Her complaining look was blaming Nanling for spending money again. Nanling quickly smiled with a smug face. Mo could only shake her head helplessly, and transferred a sum of 1 million to Nanling and said, I don't know how long you can spend this money. I find that you are spending more and more lavishly recently. Nanling was very moved, but he felt a little strange. Why did Mo seem to be not his wife, but his grandmother who gave him pocket money? With this strange feeling, they walked out of the flat-headed floating train and walked to the door of the Yangtze Giant's Eye. Because the end of the two gyms yesterday was too miserable, the disciples in front of Yanks and Giants I immediately ran in shouting as if they saw a monster when they found Euoxia and others coming. Not long after, a middle-aged swordsman with fiery red hair came out. "My name is Gyue, nice to meet Miss Fanny." Fanny. ... Okay, she was sure that this was really her family's property. But since she was here, she put one hand on the hilt of her sword and asked, "Want to fight?" The dojo master named Gyue felt extremely overwhelmed. He said helplessly, "I have heard that there is a unique and talented girl in the Gyue family. Today I see that it is true." There is something behind his words. Is he saying that Fanny is really willful and capricious? But seeing that Fanny ignored him at all, Gyue could only sigh and cheer up and said, "Then let's follow the rules of the challenge. How about 3 fights to decide the winner?" This strong feeling of exhaustion makes people feel distressed. Chapter 316 The Zone family is everywhere. Yanks and Giants is the office of Gyue family in the Star Federation, which is quite surprising. This kind of thing is actually normal. After all, the Star Federation is still the nominal center of human civilization, and it is natural for various forces to send their men to establish outposts. But Fanny doesn't care who opened this gym. Since this thing accepted the offerings of the Food First Consortium, it is her enemy. In fact, because they were one of our own, he was even more ruthless. "If I win, I want you to delist." Gyue's face twitched again, and then he said very bluntly, "This won't do, Miss Fanny. We have finally established a firm position in the Star Federation with Yanks and Sword's Eye. If we delist it like this, it means that all the previous investment will be wasted. This is the public property of the Gyue family." Then he thought for a while and said, "In fact, we can try another way. Miss, I know you have also set up a company. If you can win the challenge, I'm willing to give you 30% of the shares of Yanks and Sword's Eye. If I win by chance, I will also give you 30% of the shares. How about it?" When Fanny heard this, her face turned sour and she said unhappily, "I didn't expect you to be so brave." Gyue hurriedly smiled and said, "It's not that I'm brave, but my family has a saying. This is a test for Miss Fanny. If you win, you can get 30% of the income of Yanks and Sword's Eye. This is a reward for you. If we lose, we won't take your shares for nothing. We will use real money to buy them at a price 30% higher than the market price. You're a lady from Chuxing. You should know that the Gyue family will not let their own people suffer." Upon hearing this, Fanny raised the corner of her mouth and didn't say anything. She just said something irrelevant. "Gyue, you were a distant branch of the Gyue family, right?" Gyue nodded and said, "Yes, I'm not outstanding. If it weren't for the support of the Gyue family, I would not have been able to obtain the resources to cultivate to the 5th level of the golden corn now." Fanny understood. That's no wonder. She didn't want to say anything more to Gyue. In fact, including Nanlin, everyone has understood that the control of the Gyue family's main lineage over the Gyue family is reflected in the trust of these side branches. They are very happy to give these remote side branches resources and opportunities, and even support them to rise. As for the core branches that can really threaten them, they support them openly and suppress them secretly. Anyway, Nanling felt it several times with Fanny, but every time he couldn't really tell the reason. But this is the method used by the Gyue family's direct lineage. In fact, from the perspective of the entire Gyue family, this is a very correct thing to do. At least this way, the continuation and prosperity of the entire Gyue family can be guaranteed. And this time, the method also fully reflects the methods used by the real power holders of the Gyue family. If Fanny wins, it means she is being favored, and if she loses, she can take the opportunity to invest in Fanolin. It seems that this weapons company that has never been properly operated has attracted the attention of the Gyue family, or is it that they really value someone else? Nanling suddenly thought of something and quickly sent a message to Gyuchen. "Uncle Gyue, have you shown up outside recently?" Gyuchen did not respond immediately, but later replied, "I went to a dance party. The grandson of the elder of the clan invited me to marry, and I had to attend." Nanling understood and said, "Then I understand. Perhaps this is why they saw through your true and false." Gyuchen said, "There is no way. At the time, I had just broken through the realm and my aura was not stable. Even if I tried my best to suppress my aura, I guess it was still discovered by some people with ulterior motives." Nanling suggested, "Then you can't deliberately conceal it anymore, it's better to admit it openly." Gyuchen said, "I thought so too, I originally planned to tell you after my realm stabilized." Nanling replied, "Uncle Gyue can break through to the nascent soul stage, this is great, congratulations." He exchanged a few more polite words with Gyuchen before ending the communication. It seemed that he had known that Ge Chen had broken through to the nascent soul stage, but in fact he had just confirmed this during the communication. As for whether Ge Chen concealed it intentionally, he felt that there was no need to consider such things. After all, he first thought why Ge Chen needed to tell him about his progress in practice in time. He had a clear mind, so he would not care about some trivial things, and naturally he could make the person he talked to feel like a spring breeze. At this time, he received Fanny's eyes asking for help as expected, and nodded confidently. Fanny immediately said, "Okay, I promise you, then today we will make an appointment for 3 battles, and the stakes will be the shares of our respective industries." Gue agreed calmly. He didn't care about gains and losses at all. After all, this was not his industry. So the 2 sides agreed to 3 battles. Because of Fanny's absolute confidence, she directly pointed out Thongxi as the first fighter of Zhuoxia. Gue also immediately pointed out a disciple. Her. Fanny was surprised and said, "Your disciple is well taught. He has already reached the 10th level of foundation building." Gue nodded and said, "Miss, such a thing is not surprising. The disciples in the dojo don't need to be distracted by other things. It is easier for them to break through the bottleneck if they concentrate on practicing. This is Minjian, my new disciple who I accepted 5 years ago. His cultivation has been passed down from me. Brother Thongxia should be careful." Thongxia said calmly, "Thank you for reminding me. I haven't wasted these days." He was only a step away from the golden elixir, and he could even cross it at any time. After all, it has been a while since he broke through to the 10th level of foundation building, and he has also gained a lot in these days. The reason why he suppressed his realm was that he felt that Nanlin, who had given him so much inspiration, had not yet formed a pill, so how could he rashly form a pill? It was a kind of respect for teachers in his heart. Of course, in the process of suppressing his realm, he often heard the 3 people talking about the way of cultivation, and he himself also gained a lot. So Thongxia stood on the training ground, drew out his spirit sword, bowed slightly to the young disciple named Minyan, and said, "Don't be nervous, just treat it as asking for advice between brothers. The swordsmanship you learn should also come from the ancient domain, and it is the same as what I learned." Minyan was young and energetic, and he said, "You and I are not brothers, uncle." Thongxia was a little upset at the time. This young man was too foul-mouthed. Then he was too lazy to talk nonsense, and simply swung the sword to pick and let Minyan. A magical thing happened. It was obviously Thongxia who drew his sword first, but to others it seemed that Minjian attacked with his sword first and Thongxia was just defending. This was Thongxia's sword theory, which emphasized the importance of being the last to strike and the first to arrive. Even if he was the first to strike, he would force himself to be the last to strike and the first to arrive. Even in this situation, the sword moves in his hand were calm and peaceful, and they actually had a solemn atmosphere. Minjian's attack became more and more fierce, and he used all his knowledge, and even screamed excitedly. However, Gue shook his head helplessly and sighed. The people in Zhuoxia over there didn't take it seriously at all. There was no suspense. Chapter 317. Always ahead of the times. The master of Yang and Jianzai sighed quite obviously. A disciple beside him asked in confusion, "Master, why are you sighing?" Junior brother obviously performed very well and it seems that victory is in sight. Gue pointed to a steady young man beside him and said, "Ask your senior brother Ongshu." The steady young man had a majestic look. He looked at the battle over there and said helplessly, "Junior brother Minjian has made rapid progress in cultivation in recent years, but he is still lacking in swordsmanship. The other side's senior brother Thongxi is a very powerful person. His sword moves seem to be defensive, but in fact he is already guiding junior brother Minjian's sword moves. At this time, both sides are just fighting with swords without using spiritual power, so nothing can be seen. Once spiritual power is used." Before he finished speaking, Minjian over there couldn't wait to use his spiritual power first. The long sword in Minjian's hand was burning fiercely, and the sword edge expanded from the original 1 meter and 2 meters to 2 meters. The exploding flames seemed to be able to ignite everything, full of destructive power. However, Thongxia still resisted lightly. There was no spiritual power on the spiritual sword in his hand, but it was buzzing like a living thing. When Thongxia touched the flames full of terrifying destructive power with his spiritual sword, a magical thing happened. The flames were tamed all of a sudden, and all quietly revolved around the spiritual sword in Thongxia's hand. Soul stealing, I didn't expect him to be able to seize souls. The young disciple named Rongshu took a deep breath and looked at the scene in shock. A disciple asked, "Big brother, what does this mean?" Rongshu said, This means that this senior brother Thongshi not only has excellent swordsmanship, but his understanding and control of spiritual power far exceeds that of junior brother Minjian. Even I, who has already entered the Jindan realm, am not sure I can do this. The disciple exclaimed, could it be that this Thongshi has also reached the Jindan realm? Isn't that bullying the weak? Rongshu shook his head and said, no, senior brother Thongshi has not yet reached the Jindan realm. He is just very close to it. I don't even understand why he is still in the foundation building stage without making a breakthrough at his level. Master, I am stupid and can't understand the situation of this senior brother Thongshi. Gui looked at Fanny and others who were looking at him with interest with a complicated expression, then shook his head and said, there are always some brilliant people who will deliberately suppress their realm in order to accumulate more profound knowledge. This little brother Thongshi should be in this situation, but you must not take it too seriously. Only brilliant people can do this kind of thing. He is now worried that his disciple's confidence has been completely shaken. However, when Minyan saw that all the flames he controlled were controlled by Hongshi, he said calmly, I lost. Uncle Hongshi's cultivation is really amazing. In fact, I realized it when we were fighting swords earlier. But I was just setting an example for my senior brother and master. Next, it's my turn for my senior brother to come out. He is not easy to deal with. Rongshu said with a smile. You guy, don't embarrass me and my master. Miss Fanny and her team are all outstanding people. I dare not claim victory. Minyan was not affected by the failure at all. He said, of course I know that you, senior brother, can't beat them. After all, I have watched the video of the two ladies challenge yesterday many times. I didn't understand it before. Now think about it from another angle. If Miss Fanny wins, it means that our gym has suddenly added two strong players like the two ladies. This idea is also quite strange, but it seems to be the same when he said it. Fanny and others looked at each other, and they completely lost their fighting spirit because of Minyan's cheerful words. Fanny waved her hands in a somewhat frustrated manner and said, okay, stop talking nonsense, and start the next game quickly. Her enthusiasm had passed again, and now she was in a state of boredom after being pushed on the top of the pole and unable to retreat. So she stretched out her hand and pointed to Nanling and said, Xiaonan, you go in the next game, win or lose as you like. Isn't it up to you to win or lose? Anyway, if Nanling loses, she will cover for him. Nanling didn't expect that he would have something to do here. He was not prepared, and he had been thinking about how to make clothes for the two aunts in his mind. But since the boss asked him to fight, he would fight. So he didn't refuse much, and walked directly to the center of the training ground in his armor. He looked at the surrounding gym disciples who were not wearing combat armor, so he took off his pure color faith. Rongshu looked a little solemn, not because he felt that Nanling's fate as a person who had not yet reached the golden ellipse level made him feel unappreciated, but precisely because Nanling's casual presence at that station brought him an extremely strong sense of oppression. This was something he had never felt even from his own master. The look in his eyes, even if it was just a fleeting glance, but the eyes full of wisdom and penetration made him feel that there was no secret in his body. And after this glance, Nanling said lightly, your Jindan realm is unstable. You shouldn't take action at this time, otherwise it may cause the problem of Jindan collapse. Rongshu was stunned. He didn't expect that the other party, who was only at the peak of foundation building, could see through the real and fake of him, a newly promoted Jindan. Seeing that he didn't react for a while, Nanling said again, your breath is unstable, and there are clouds of spiritual power in your Dantan. This is the state of Jindan condensed but not solid. I personally think that this is because the spiritual formation you practiced is not very suitable for your physique. After all, the inherited skills can only be said to be more popular, and it is not really suitable for everyone. Rongshu was stunned by what Nanling said. At this time, the fire attribute spiritual pattern appeared in front of Nanling. He looked at Rongshu and said, your temperament is quite stable and reserved. To be honest, it doesn't match the heat and unrestrained power of fire spirit power. Then the fire spirit formation in your practice is not suitable. Take a look at my spirit formation. Other spirit formations cannot be changed, but the last one is the spirit formation of the 10th level of foundation building. You can try to fine-tune it according to the appearance of my spirit formation. It should be effective. Rongshu was moved again, and even Gui had an unbelievable look on his face. Because when he saw the spirit formation, with his cultivation and knowledge, he could tell at a glance that this was indeed a new fire spirit formation. Maybe it was really more suitable for Rongshu. Seeing these guys look like they had never seen the world, Fanny became excited again. She laughed and said, "Don't be surprised. This is the cultivation master of our Zhuoxia team. He usually likes to study various cultivation problems with us. Don't look at him only building the foundation now, but that's because his attempts in the foundation building stage have not been completed. In fact, he has already studied the cultivation of the nascent soul stage." Bluffing, Fanny thought it was really interesting to bluff like this. Who knew Nanling would be embarrassed after hearing this? Mo's eyes whitened suddenly. She was getting to know Nanling better and better now. This guy's expression was like he was being talked about. In other words, this guy was really studying the cultivation of the nascent soul stage. Chapter 318 Teaching Battle. Because of the fire spirit formation diagram that Nanling pointed out casually, the atmosphere suddenly became harmonious and friendly. For him, this might be just a little scrap in the research process, but for Rongshu, it was a guide that could consolidate the foundation and improve a lot. This is the grace of preaching. Even his teacher Gyui benefited a lot. I give up. Rongshu gave up, and even gave up with a strong sense of gratitude. He now even looked forward to Zhuoxia's people joining the management of his own Yangtze Sword House, because in this way he might have the opportunity to get more guidance. It's really good to think about it this way, and he has already given up, the matter is settled. It's just that I feel a little sorry for my master. Well, my master Gyui is also smiling foolishly there, so it's okay. Gyui clasped his fists to Fan and I happily and said, "Ms. Fan and I, we're a family now." As the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. Gyui was really happy. After all, Yangtze Sword House was a public property of the Gyui family, and he could only take a 10% share at most. Now a young lady from the core branch of the Gyui family has come to take charge and can also guide him in his cultivation. In his opinion, this is another welfare from the Gyui family. Fanny was very depressed. She looked listless and wanted to beat someone up, but now she couldn't beat her own people, right? Her expression was actually quite distressing, and Mo couldn't help it. She looked at Nanling and secretly sent a message. Why don't you think of a way to let Fanny do something to divert her attention? It's not good to always suppress her temper. Nanling replied unhappily. Just spoil her. How was she suppressed? It's obvious that she is always indulging herself, and she only suppresses it occasionally. Mo smiled bitterly and said, "But I have never been able to resist Fanny's lost and lonely expression, and I always can't help wanting to find a way to make her happy." Nanling was helpless, and really didn't know whose wife this was. He thought for a moment and said to Gyui calmly, "Actually, I have something I want to ask Master Gyuzai." Gyui immediately cheered up and said, "Master Nan, please tell me." Nanling felt a little strange. He was called a master. But he thought that people these days practiced magic but not law, and practiced law but not Taoism. For someone like him who pursued the origin of cultivation, even if his understanding was shallow, it seemed nothing wrong to be called a master. Nanling said, "I want to ask Master Gyuzai to have a serious fight with Fan." Gyui raised his eyebrows unexpectedly, and even Fanny was very surprised. She asked first, "Why?" Nanling said, "Have you forgotten the simplification you learned yesterday? I thought you would comprehend it carefully when you came back yesterday, but I didn't expect you to forget it completely because you were busy eating when you went back. Now this is a rare opportunity. You have Master Gyuzai, a master of the 5th level of Jindan, to teach you the moves. You must grasp that feeling well, combine your swordsmanship, magic, and spiritual power, and use them in the most comfortable way. Just like what you did yesterday." Fanny was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "I know." Then she frowned and began to recall yesterday's state. But I don't know if it was because the hot pot yesterday was too delicious. Her mind was full of the smell of hot pot, which made her frown and drool rapidly. Then Nanling said to Gyui, "Please Master Gyuzai teach Fanny the moves. She is now at the 2nd level of Jindan, and she needs Master Gyuzai, a master of the 5th level of Jindan, to give her enough pressure. Moreover, Master Gyuzai can also draw inferences from similar cases in this process, which should be a win-win situation." Gyui was also moved when he heard this. He said, "I really want it, I dare not refuse." He was completely persuaded by Nanlin, and now he was full of thoughts of asking Fan and I for the secret teachings of the Gyui family. Nanling laughed and said, "Okay, this is actually our own teaching and martial arts performance. You can call all the disciples of the dojo to watch. I believe they should be inspired." Gyui did as he was told, and Fan and I's vanity was filled up at once. She found that she really liked Nanling more and more. How could there be such a caring little cutie? The hot pot taste that was full of her mind before was finally removed, and she turned to put on airs under the gaze of everyone. It was an accident that she was able to simplify it yesterday, and she did it this time as well. The golden wheel of the scorching sun behind her slowly rotated, and she stretched out her hand with a businesslike smile and pointed out a spiritual sword made of flames, which contained extremely terrifying power, and shot it at Yue. She didn't feel it before, but now she felt it, because she felt that she had to behave more advanced under the gaze of so many people. It is certainly very enjoyable to perform various powerful spells, but the long pre-swim makes her look a little stupid. So the movement should be chic and concise, the pre-swim time should not be too long, and the post-swim should also be controlled. Isn't this a simplification? Nanling really understands. He knows how to use the vanity of Boss Fanna to stimulate her progress. It is also sad to say that he, an employee and part-time rival in love, has to worry about this. However, Yue is the owner of Yangtze Sword House after all, and his cultivation is sufficient. He slowly displays what he has learned, and calmly responds with a long sword that is also full of fire. He even looks at ease. Nanling looked at it for a while and said, "Master Yuzai, please increase your strength. Fanny needs more pressure." Although Fanny was a little out of breath, she still responded repeatedly, "Yes, yes, please increase your strength." Yue said with embarrassment, "Master Nan, this is my best condition now. If I increase the pressure again, I'm afraid I can't control it so well." Fanna said indifferently, "Don't worry, I can do it, just increase your strength." Yue didn't dare to do that. While he was in embarrassment, Nanling said, "What do you know? Master Yuzai's ease at this time is what you should learn. I found that the rhythm of the Gi family swordsmanship is very important, because although the fire spirit power is full of explosive power and destructiveness, there is an indispensable charging stage. Master Yuzai's rhythm can adjust the charging very freely, and can burst out extremely strong lethality at any time. In comparison, your charging is more chaotic. If a master finds the point where you are not charging enough and attacks you, it will be fatal." Fanna said unconvinced, "Then why don't you find such a master for me? This girl is rebelling again." Nanling couldn't help but look at Yue. Yue immediately said in embarrassment, "Master Nan, I have tried my best. If I go faster, I'm afraid my own rhythm will be messed up first. Miss Fanny is indeed very talented. Even if I know there is a flaw, I can't catch it." Nanling understood and said, "Don't worry, Master Yuzai, just do it, I will help you." Mo didn't know how to describe her feelings. She asked Nanling to find a way to make Fanny happy, but she didn't ask him to go out and beat Fanny with others. What made her speechless was that Fanny seemed to be really excited. "Okay, you two come together and see how I beat you." The word "you" was very essential. Nanling almost rolled his eyes when he heard it. Is this directed at him? Chapter 319. Combustion Technique. Nanling didn't mind Fanny's enthusiasm at all. He didn't join the fight between the two sides, but quietly came behind Yue, then stretched out his hand and waved a spiritual power to cover Yue's body. This is wind spiritual power, but it has a completely different feeling. This wind spiritual power covered Yue's whole body, and at first Yue's whole body was tense and a little defensive. But then he found that this wind spiritual power was only blessing his body and did not produce any other effects. And with his divine sense detection, it can be known that this wind spiritual power is extremely rich in oxygen, and there is also a very balanced and stable pressure. This reminded him of the wisdom core. He looked at Nanling in astonishment, and then asked, "Is this a blessing spell?" Nanling nodded and said, "Let's call it combustion supporting technique." He casually named this wind technique without sincerity. And Yue did have a completely different feeling under the blessing of this combustion supporting technique. His firepower had just been added to the sword blade, and the wind power wrapped around it would spiral around it, causing the firepower to explode instantly. But the next moment, the blazing flames would be quickly suppressed, allowing Yue to control the powerful firepower more freely. He looked at Nanling in amazement and said, "Can your blessing spell help me control the firepower?" Nanling smiled and said, "Wind can also help the fire control. This also refers to the effect of the constant power of the wisdom core. To be honest, I really admire the person who invented the wisdom core. The ability of the wisdom core is too amazing." Yue was still amazed, but Fanny over there couldn't wait. She said, "Are you done procrastinating? If you want to be amazed, you'll have plenty of opportunities in the future. Xiaonan has never stopped coming up with wonderful ideas. Hurry up now. You have been strengthened. Come and try it quickly." She couldn't wait, and wanted to know what effect Nanling's combustion boosting technique would have. Yue cheered up and immediately drew his sword again. He felt that this feeling was amazing. Although his cultivation, consciousness, and reaction had not changed, with the help of Nanling's combustion technique, his power storage and power had been improved step by step. The direct effect was that his originally self-consistent rhythm could be suddenly improved. The perfect rhythm he could control became faster. Every time he drew his sword, the lethality was full, and every time he put the sword back, the power storage could be completed in a short time. This made him so happy. He had never used such a fast and hearty sword technique, so that he had a more clever understanding of the operation of his own spiritual power, which made him vaguely touch the threshold of the next realm. Fanny, who was opposite him, felt uncomfortable. She just felt that the pressure in front of her suddenly increased. Although she tried very hard before, she was a little careless after all. But now it's not possible. She found that if she continued to be careless, she would be embarrassed. Face is more important than anything else. In the case of insisting on face, she was finally forced to use her potential. What are the principles of magic, what are the trajectory of spiritual power, and what are the moves of sword? None of these are important. She almost instinctively integrated all the power she could control in a hurry. No longer pursuing the ultimate lethality of each move and each style, but only seeking to play a role. Therefore, her sword became more concise, but the deterrent power did not decrease but increased. Because her control over her own power has improved, this is the most important thing in high-end games. In this battle, she was sweating profusely. Simplifying the complex is also officially on track, which can be said to be a huge improvement. Gui was also happy. Although his realm was higher than Fan and I, he was actually backward in all aspects in terms of spiritual power accumulation, physical talent and foundation. But under the blessing of Nanling's combustion technique, he used less strength to play a stronger role throughout the whole process. So much so that with the recovery ability of a Jindan cultivator, Fan and I was already panting at the end of the fight, but he didn't feel tired at all. At this time, Nanling's voice suddenly rang in his ears. "It's almost time, you should lose." Gui came back to his senses with a start. He noticed Fanny's state and immediately became annoyed. Isn't this making the young lady unhappy? So he hurriedly pretended to increase his output to in. But somehow, he accidentally dispersed the winged spiritual power on his body. He was stunned at the time and a flaw naturally appeared. Fanny saw the opportunity and of course she wanted to seize this flaw. She had already pointed out 2 spiritual sword beams at an extremely fast speed. That's right, she had condensed what she had learned into the sword way without knowing it, so she naturally learned the way of sword-like differentiation. The 2 differentiated sword beams made Gui's scalp numb. He suddenly realized that Fanny had broken through again in the battle. What a creepy talent! And he could only block with his sword. The sword body resisted a sword beam. But the next sword beam still touched his chest, making a hole in his shirt. "Master." The disciples gathered around nervously. But Gui pushed everyone away with a solemn expression, then bowed to Fanny from a distance and said, "Thank you, miss, for showing mercy." Gui lost, and I lost with conviction. Fanny showed a reserved look, silent, but actually calmed her breath. When Nanling saw that she seemed to be looking at him, he immediately flattered her sincerely, "Boss, you're awesome. I didn't expect that even with my help, this Gyuzhu still couldn't beat you." Why do people say that Fanny likes Nanling? It is this perfect compliment, coupled with the expression of the lackey, that really makes her too comfortable and want to float too much. Her eyebrows are about to dance. The tense face can hardly hold back. Mo sighed secretly when she saw this, thinking that Fanny had actually been conquered by her husband for a long time, right? Fanny was satisfied, waved her hand and left the training ground in a leisurely manner, saying, "Who will take me to visit here? Where does one need to visit?" In fact, the Yangtze Sword Pavilion was not very clear after a quick glance. The main reason was that her legs were really weak, and she wanted to find an excuse to take a walk and shake her legs. Gui immediately arranged for his eldest disciple Rongshu to lead the way. He stayed behind and suddenly bowed to Nanling behind him. Nanling was surprised and hurried forward to support him and said, "Master Guzai, why are you doing this?" Gui said sincerely, "Thank you for your guidance, Master. I have benefited a lot." Nanling waved his hand and said, "You have learned it by yourself, it has nothing to do with me." Gui still said respectfully, "Master, you are humble, but I must repay your kindness. From now on, I will thank you as a teacher." Nanling felt a tingling sensation on her scalp. Is it so troublesome? But Gui knew the value of Nanling and the combustion supporting technique, which could be said to be tailor-made for the Gui family inheritance. He couldn't help but look at Fanny's receding figure, secretly sighing at the luck of this young lady. Chapter 320. Excessive Force. As the owner of Yangtze Sword House, Gui was only respectful to his new boss Fanny, but he really respected Nanling. Because as an eyewitness, he knew too well how magical Nanling's combustion assisting technique was. It not only improved some of his combat capabilities, but also inspired his understanding of the use of spiritual power. Master Nan, where are you going to register this combustion assisting technique? Gui suddenly asked in a mysterious tone. Nanling looked at Gui speechlessly. The title of Master Nan really made him laugh and cry, and he felt more ashamed than Master Nan. But then he realized that the owner of Gui House in front of him must have meant something. He pondered and said, "Did someone from Gui ask you to ask?" Gui nodded and said frankly, "I was born in a Gui family, and I have the help of the clan to achieve my current achievements. Please forgive me, Master Nan." At the moment, he had reported everything that happened before to the Gui clan. Nanling would not be too fussy about such things. Instead, he replied calmly, "I am not going to register the copyright for this spell." Gui was a little surprised. He asked, "Why?" Nanling said, "Because I think this spell should be useful to no one except me, so why bother?" Gui was still puzzled. Nanling sighed and said, "Normal people can reach the level 9 wind control technique, can see through the trajectory of the spiritual power of a Jindan cultivator like you and make fine adjustments at any time. Who would spend energy to practice such a thing? Wouldn't it be better to practice an offensive spell and beat people yourself?" He classified himself as an abnormal person. This self-deprecating spirit also made Gui quite convinced. He said, "Master Nan, you have really taken great pains for Miss Fan." Nanling immediately distanced himself from the matter and said, "This has nothing to do with Fanny, don't talk nonsense. I can create this spell purely because of the current need and I just happen to meet all the conditions, so it's natural to do it. In other words, this spell was created by me specifically for you." He confirmed this very seriously and seriously. You know, if Mo really thought that he created a spell specifically for Fanny without considering her, well, the key is that he didn't create a spell for her first. His sister Mo would definitely feel uncomfortable. However, he underestimated the lethality of this operation to a middle-aged man. A middle-aged man who has been carrying the pressure of life and has always been walking alone, for the first time felt what it means to be valued. "Is this a spell created for me?" Gui asked with some trembling. Nanling's scalp was numb at the time. Why is Gui's eyes so scary? He is still young and can't bear it. So he didn't dare to say a word, waved his hand hurriedly, stood up and ran back. Well, he ran 2 steps, and simply used the wind escape, and returned to the Funlim building in a flash. At this time, Mo's message came. "Why did you run away by yourself?" "Oh, it seems that you used too much force in the strategy this time." Because it was a text message, it was impossible to tell what kind of mentality Mo had when sending these words at this time. But Nanling saw it, and it seemed that he saw Mo's smiling expression. There is no doubt that he embarrassed himself in front of his wife. Anyway, when Fan and I came back, she laughed so hard when she saw Nanling. The purpose of making her happy was perfectly achieved, but Nanling felt that she had sacrificed a little too much this time. And this laughter has a tendency to last for a long time. Nanling doesn't want to keep listening to this laughter. So he decisively changed the subject and said, "Today we have dealt with Yangs and Giant's Eye, so where are we going tomorrow?" Fanu then stopped smiling and said, "It's very simple, we just need to attack them one by one from near to far." This is indeed her style, she is too lazy to think about it. Then she turned her eyes and asked, "Speaking of which, how do you know so much about the fire spirit array?" "I have seen the spirit array you just showed, and I think it is quite interesting." Nanling said, "Don't forget that I also have used bloodliner, so what's wrong with having a little fire talent?" In addition to the fire spirit array, he was also thinking about the thunder spirit array, and even studied the water spirit array by the way. It seems that he has distracted his attention, but in fact, when he has achieved his own understanding, coupled with the experience of thinking about the wind spirit array, he can really master 100 methods. He increasingly understands the essence of spiritual power being just a tool, which seems to have returned to the general cognition of people in this era. But this is different. Compared with people of this era, he has experienced the process of seeing mountains as not mountains, seeing water as not water once more, and now he has returned to the level of seeing mountains as mountains, seeing water as water. That is, he realized that spiritual power is just a phenomenon caused by a concept, and the concept comes from cognition, but cognition comes from the study of the phenomenon. It seems to be caught in the dead cycle of which came first, the chicken or the egg. But Nanling knows that this is the mystery contained in spiritual power, and it is also a very important goal on his path of cultivation. This is where his Taoism lies, transcending the world. Perhaps it is precisely because of this that many of the cultivation matters in the world have become solvable problems in his eyes. At this time, Mo next to him said with emotion, "To be honest, you always have new insights to share with us every once in a while, and our understanding has also improved a lot. In fact, I have a hunch that one day we will not be able to catch up with your thinking." Nanling smiled and said, "How is that possible? Sister Mo's cultivation is higher than mine, and she has actually entered the second level of Jindan a long time ago, right?" Fanny looked at Mo in surprise and said, "Your progress is too fast." Mo said unhappily, "Your progress is slow. Do you dare to say that you have not suppressed the realm?" Fanny finally said a little embarrassedly this time, "There is no way. Who made this guy have too many strange ideas, and I'm always worried that I will progress too fast and miss many of his ideas." Nanling was speechless and a little emotional when he heard this. It was his fate to meet these two girls. He focused on theoretical research, and these two girls were true cultivation geniuses who could successfully put many of his theories into practice. Fanny suddenly showed rare delicacy of this time. She said, "And the red stone, I know that he has been suppressing your realm. It seems that he will keep suppressing you unless you break through to the golden elixir." Nanling could only smile bitterly and said, "Okay, I will break through as soon as possible." He felt that it was time to find some time to study how to whack the Thunder Spirit to himself, and then form the golden elixir. But before that, he had to get the kick-out done first. The heritage of the catering culture that he valued must not be tarnished. Oh, and everyone's new clothes. Nanling's mind was full of inspiration again, and then he began to operate impatiently. First, he had to eat cloth with spiritual silk, a long-awaited update, because there is something worth celebrating. I won't say what it is. Hey, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 321 The Beauty of Chinese Clothes. The crystal-clear silk threads were woven and shuttled in the air. They were interlaced and woven together quickly like a military formation, quickly forming a long spiritual brocade. This was Nanling weaving brocade with spiritual threads, and what he wove was naturally spiritual brocade. Moreover, these spiritual brocades seemed light and erratic, but in fact they were extremely strong. This was not the strength of the spiritual brocade itself, but the spiritual power intertwined in the spiritual threads to form a dense network, which actually naturally created a spiritual field that enveloped the spiritual brocade. This spiritual field has no resistance to physical damage, but its strength is higher than that of ordinary clothes. However, it is naturally resistant to spell attacks and energy attacks. Wearing the spiritual brocade, even without doing anything, you can be immune to a certain degree of energy attacks. And if it is infused with spiritual power, plus the spiritual formation made by Nanling, it can have super strong physical and energy defense at the same time. There are even many wonderful uses. However, when he put the finished clothes in front of Fanny and Mo, the two of them actually looked at each other and looked at him with a very complicated look. There is something wrong with this look, as if looking at a scumbag. Nanling was confused for a moment. In the end, Mo couldn't bear it and was more tolerant. She said, "If you really want to see this dress, I can wear it in my room tonight. Why take it out in public to humiliate us?" Fanny nodded and said, "Yes, I can wear it in private, but it's a bit boring if you call everyone here." Thongchi immediately turned his head as if he was studying whether there were any gaps on the wall. Li Ji put on a dress curiously and said, "This dress is so transparent. Do I need to take it off naked to wear it?" Sure enough, even though Li Ji had become a digital life, she was still the old aunt who always liked to tease people. Nanling realized what a mistake she had made. Because the brocade dress woven by Ling Jin on Li Ji was so thin and transparent, hazy and almost invisible. Is this simply a happy dress for the boudoir? Nanling covered his face with a slap, and then said, "It's my fault for not making it clear." His serious face made people feel as if he really didn't realize it. Then he reached out and took the thin dress in Mo's hand and put it on her, then said, "Pour some spiritual power into it and see, it needs spiritual power to render." Mo was surprised for a moment, and then injected spiritual power as Nanling said. The next moment, she was surprised and a little embarrassed to see the changes in the dress. That is, with the rendering of her spiritual power, this originally thin, transparent and almost colorless dress quickly dyed a blue-purple color. It looked noble with some mysterious beauty. She was embarrassed because she'd found that she had misunderstood Nanling. At this time, she asked unexpectedly, "What's the matter with this color?" Nanling said, "To some extent, this is the color of your spiritual power, it's really beautiful." He praised it. I don't know if he was praising the clothes, the color, or the person. Anyway, most cheeks quickly flushed, and then she said, "Wait a minute, I'll find some suitable lining clothes to try. By the way, what is this dress called?" Nanling said, "They are called Han." "Never mind, I don't know much about these ancient cultures, I just restored them based on my own impressions and imaginations, so you can give it a name you like." Mo nodded, and then said seriously, "I like this dress very much, how about calling it Purple Cloud Dress? It has a bit of classical aesthetics," and Nanling also said happily, "I like this name." Fanna couldn't wait to put on her own clothes at this time, but she saw that she used her spiritual power to stimulate it, and then revealed a bright red color. This lively color is also suitable for her personality. She said, "Okay, I'll call it Red Cloud Dress, how about it?" Nanling nodded and said, "Boss, you are very literary. Flattery can't stop." Fanna smiled. Watching the two aunts go back to their rooms to change clothes with great interest, and even chattering about dressing in the same room, Nanling suddenly realized. Women only fight when they are not satisfied, but if he can satisfy them, then the family will be harmonious. Nanling realized it, but his heart was also very tired. He hadn't consummated his marriage with his wife yet, but he felt a kind of middle-aged fatigue. But fortunately, the result was good. When they came out of the room after changing clothes, Nanling felt that it was pleasing to the eye and full of joy. Fanna chose a white lining, which was actually a simple and close-fitting jumpsuit in the style of the ancient domain, with a very plain feeling. When she put on the red clouds made by Nanling for her, the red clouds on the plainness had a bright contrast beauty, and it was also full of ancient meaning. Moreover, this ancient meaning was mixed with the ancient domain's classics and a more ancient and long-lasting beauty. This is a kind of outfit that has never appeared in this world, but it is also very beautiful. On the other side, Mo chose the same black lining. The purple bluesy union, which was worn on her body, gave her a feeling of indigo. This made Mo look more restrained and elegant, and she could be said to be indistinguishable from Fanna. Nanling was satisfied, but still had regrets. After all, he only restored a little fur according to his impression, adding some splendid clothes and grand ceremony to the aesthetics of this era. This ancient charm quickly attracted everyone, including Nanling himself, who also wore a blue warrior suit to go out. Thongchi also had new clothes, but the color was not bright. He looked like a bodyguard, which was in line with his rigorous and low-key personality. However, this time they took public transportation again, and they had a completely different mentality. They were a little impatient when they were watched by others before. But now, under the watch of others, they are more energetic and want to show the charm of their own clothes. This made Nanling seem to have returned to the past, when he paraded in Hanfa. At the time, he was also full of pride and fun. He immediately felt much better, and at the same time, he secretly decided that if anyone dared to register the copyright of this gorgeous dress again, he would never let him go. This dress is beautiful and tasteful, and when worn by Fanny, she looks reserved and feminine. The opponent they challenged this time faced a gorgeous and unparalleled battle. Fanny was wearing a bright red dress with a scorching golden wheel behind her as the background, just like a black bird in the sun, floating in the air and releasing infinite heat. To be honest, there was no resistance today, because when Fanny and Mo appeared in front of them like goddesses, they were all stunned. So beauty is also a kind of power, at least the fighting spirit of those who were enemies of beauty is directly reduced by 20%. Chapter 322. The Consortium's response: beautiful, strong, and fashionable. This was the first impression people gave when the Zhuoxia team paraded in gorgeous clothes and was photographed and posted online. At the same time, they also caused a big trend on the internet in an instant. The main reason was that they found that the Zhuoxia team was really fulfilling Nanling's promise in the previous video and went to trouble food first. Now, everyone in the gym related to the Food First Consortium was in danger. Because they already knew that the Angs and Jianzai had changed the actual behind-the-scenes owner, and the other gyms simply lost a large sum of money. That was almost the sum of all the money offered by Food First. As a digital life, Li Ji easily obtained this data and then set the goal of this challenge. It must be said that this was a very smart move. It seemed that the challenge was successful and offended this gym to death, but in fact it only forced this gym to completely draw a line between itself and the Food First Consortium. This was a real murder. Boring, too boring. When returning to the Fanolin building, Fan and I kept shaking her head to express boredom. It would be better to fight with that guy Gui. Mo quickly advised. Don't disturb Yuzhu, he has gone into seclusion. If his cultivation can reach a higher level, it will be a great help for us. Fana said gloomily. Of course I know, so I'm just talking. Mo quickly gave Nanling a look, indicating it's your turn, make her happy soon. Nanling was speechless. When did he start doing this kind of thing full time? But he knew Fana's temperament too well. After a little hesitation, he said, Boss Fana, you are so beautiful today. Didn't you see that the owner looked at you with a look of amazement on his face, and even reacted half a beat slower when he took action? This time, you defeated your opponent with your beauty and charm, which is really amazing. Fana wrinkled her nose and said, I feel like you are saying that I am a vase. She didn't look very happy, but it was completely different from the bored and depressed feeling before. She was led astray in an instant. Nanling said, No, I was praising your beauty. He paused, then looked at Mo and said, You are so beautiful today. You all defeated the enemy with your beauty. Those who have no strength and can only rely on beauty are just vases, but it's different for you who have both beauty and strength. Beauty is just your embellishment, but even the embellishment can defeat the enemy, which highlights your strength. It must be said that he really knows how to praise people. Especially when he included Mo in the praise, the cold-natured sister couldn't help but smile. She sent a message with some embarrassment. Really, I just asked you to coax Fanny, why did you mention me too? Nanling replied. Coaxing the boss is a job, but coaxing your wife is absolutely involuntary. Yes, very good. Mo couldn't help but press one hand on her chest, and felt her heart palpitating. On the contrary, Nanling thought it was nothing, and he had become accustomed to flirting with his wife. At this moment, Li Ji suddenly said, Did I disturb you? Fanny was immersed in her own illusion of beautiful and powerful tide, and Mo quickly came back to her senses and said, What's the matter, Sister Li Ji? We're just summarizing today's games. Did you gain anything today? If you count Nanling's flattery, then there is still some. Li Ji didn't joke about this, but said, Someone is looking for you. It's a communication from a congressman's office. It feels a little wrong. Nanling fell into deep thought after hearing this, and then said, It's wrong. It seems that the response from the food first has finally come. I didn't expect them to directly find a congressman to come forward. Fana said, Then let's meet. I'm quite curious about how this congressman wants to do this. Nanling and Mo also sorted out their moods and prepared to deal with the communication from this congressman. They have become accustomed to the rhythm of the three of them discussing things together. The communication was connected, and Fana still appeared as Miss Q. Hello, Miss Q. This is the office of Councillor Jobel. Councillor Jobel has something to discuss with you, but he has something else to do. Please wait for a moment. The call was hung up directly. Fana's action was quick and clear, as if she had received a fraudulent call. What the hell, asking me to wait for him? Fana spat casually, then looked at Nanling and said in a coquettish manner, Can we eat dumplings tonight? I'm a little hungry. Nanling felt more and more that he had a big pet named Gifana. Of course, I'll ask Lieta to prepare the dumpling skins first, and I'll wait to make the stuffing. But it's agreed that you have to help make dumplings too. Fana patted the rice bowl and said, Don't worry, I love to do this. So the matter of the councillor's call was thrown behind their minds, and their mood was not affected at all. After a while, the call came again. Li Ji thought about it for a while and answered it herself. This is, she interrupted, Our Miss Fanny is busy now, let's talk about your business later. Then she hung up. At this time, Nanling seemed to have noticed something and gave her a thumbs up from a distance. Li Ji also felt positive encouragement and was quite proud of it. As a new digital life, her computing power has been improving, and she has not become cold but has been recovering her human breath. Nanling has made a huge contribution to this. He has been carefully protecting and guiding Li Ji's human nature. A moment later, when they had already put the dumplings into the pot, the communication came again. Li Ji answered again. If there is something, I can convey it to Miss Fana for you. There was silence on the other side, and a deep voice sounded. As a federal congressman, am I not qualified to talk to Gifani? Li Ji was slightly stunned when she heard this, and then she quickly checked the identity of this member of the Accord Congress, and then smiled and said, Mr. Accord, as a member of the Accord family's branch, you're indeed not qualified to treat Miss Fana so casually. Nanling paid attention to the situation here, and after hearing it, he gave Li Ji a thumbs up again. Awesome, this is so cool. Even Fanny couldn't help but feel a little swelled after hearing it, and raised her head and chest, and the pair of rice bowls almost knocked over the bowl of dumplings. Okay, I know you were awesome, just eat well when you eat, don't make random movements. Nanling quickly held the bowl and taught her a few words in a bad mood. Oh. Fanny lowered her head and ate dumplings obediently. When she ate delicious food, her temper was very good. The counselor accord on the communications side remained silent. He probably never thought that he would be treated like this. Chapter 323 Solving the Trouble. The appearance of Senator Ujitbi still appeared in front of Zhuoxia's team. Because when he sent the communication request for the third time, Fanny was just full and wanted to find something to amuse herself. So a man dressed in the standard federal congressman's attire appeared in the picture, with black hair and black eyes, but a raised nose bridge and an aquiline nose. He stared at Fanny, who appeared in the communication expressionlessly, and said lightly, "Miss Fanny, should you give me an explanation?" Fanny looked at him unexpectedly and asked, "What do you want an explanation about?" Senator Ujie said, "Don't play dumb, you know." Fanny waved her hand and hung up that call again. It was obvious that the way this congressman spoke made her feel very tired, and she lost interest in talking directly. Nanling paused slightly when she saw this. Mo's eyes were always on him, and she asked in surprise, "What's the matter, is there a hidden danger?" Nanling said, "Boss Fanny's behavior is bound to have hidden dangers. But it doesn't matter, I've asked Sister Li Ji to help look up the information. You go and accompany Fanny, we will take care of these things." Mo nodded and left without asking any more questions. She was already accustomed to trusting Nanling. Not long after, Li Ji came over and said, "I have collected some intelligence on this Yajob family. This is actually a family with stronger business attributes. When they first started out, they relied on controlling many key business resources of the Federation. They are a typical example of using business to intervene in politics, and then use politics to influence the military, so that they can occupy all three aspects of military, politics, and business to reach the status of a top family." Nanling immediately grasped the key point and asked, "Then what about the direction of cultivation?" Li Ji said, "The interesting thing is here. Although they rose very early, they have never been strong because they have always lagged behind other families in high-end combat power such as practitioners. There is another thing that may interest you. That is, when I was studying the data network of the Star Federation, I found an interesting phenomenon. Because of its unique political system, the Star Federation has actually been hovering on the edge of division, confrontation, and compromise and cooperation. And every time there is a division, confrontation, or a major crisis, other families contribute manpower and effort, but only the Yajob family has to contribute the most resources and money in addition to manpower and effort." Nanling was very puzzled after hearing this, and then he thought of something and said, "Could it be that the Yaji family is the money back deliberately raised by the top families in the Star Federation?" He thought of something and immediately said to Li Ji, "Based on this conjecture, analyze its political resources and its business resources. Also, help me find the location of Councillor Yaji Bell and try to find out the defensive forces around him." He assigned 2 tasks to Li Ji. However, for Li Ji, a digital life, this task of integrating information was completed in the blink of an eye. She said, "Let's talk about the Aja family first. The political power held by this family is very interesting. They control the army belonging to the federal parliament by controlling military supplies. They also have the most seats in the House of Commons, which allows them to almost control the federal finances, administrative supervision and limited legislative power." Nanling said, "This seems like a lot of power. What's the price?" Li Ji said, "The price is that they're responsible for the daily expenses of the entire federal parliament. And the House of Lords is still firmly controlled by the various families. They actually have no advantage in specific law enforcement and governance." Nanling smiled. He became more and more certain of his guess. Then he asked, "What about the army of the federal parliament?" Li Ji also laughed. She said, "The mechanical guard force that was just instigated and controlled by the digital life T-Pin is one of them, and the fleet that was almost annihilated by the Ghost Sea Fleet is the second one. There is also a guard fleet used to protect the trade route, which was almost destroyed. If it weren't for your old friend Lu Lai and his elk fleet, I'm afraid that the Yaji family would have lost all the federal forces they controlled." Nanling felt a little shocked when he heard it. At the same time, it was also that first time he knew that the federal fleet was almost wiped out. Is it so fragile? Nanling couldn't help but change the direction. He asked, "Tell me quickly, what's going on with this fleet, why is its combat effectiveness so weak?" And my brother Lulai, how is his battle situation? Don't say that he is careless and only thought of asking these things now. In fact, he has been thinking about a lot of things in his mind recently, and these unimportant things will naturally be ignored. Li Ji then gave him some information for him to read. Nanling quickly read through it, and then couldn't help but sigh at the difficult situation of Lulai at this time. He was indeed in a difficult situation. The battle had lasted for more than a month, but he could not get any supplies and could only mine resources nearby to survive. Fortunately, the attack intensity of the Ghost Sea was not strong, and his elk fleet could barely hold on. Then the problem came. The federal fleet funded by the Aja family was 4 organized fleets, which was 4 times the number of elk fleets. How could it be wiped out? At first, there was no clue, but then Nanling gradually discovered the problem. That is, the various tricks played by the Aja family on this federal fleet were really amazing. The first was the problem of the generals in the army. The senior generals of this fleet were basically directly dispatched by the Aja family, and they belonged to the gilded positions of the Aja family. And if there were powerful people from the grassroots who came out, they would be directly promoted to the star field controlled by the Aja family. So the entire 4 federal fleets have actually become a place for the Aja people to gild and recruit talents. There are even more saucy things. That is, all the equipment of the federal fleet was eliminated from the Accord fleet, and these eliminated equipment were not given directly, but purchased through military procurement at a price more expensive than new ones. I won't talk about how much of this was embezzled. The most important thing is that this can take out the annual fee funds provided by other clans. In short, the Accord people played very well, so don't blame the federal fleet for being annihilated. After all, no one knows how many of these fleets can't even fire their naval guns. When Nanling was sighing at the Accord's coquettish operations, Li Ji suddenly gave a reminder. She said, "The guard troops suddenly went out, I intercepted their target, and they came for us." Nanling muttered. Sure enough, they came to check the water meter. Li Ji asked, "What are you going to do?" Nanling said, "Have you found the location of the Accord bell?" Li Ji nodded and said, "Found it." "Are you going to go and cause trouble for him directly?" Nanling said, "No, just solve the trouble." Well, or to solve the troublemaker. After studying so much information about the Aja family, Nanling has a thorough understanding of the characteristics of this family, so he now knows exactly how to proceed. Chapter 324 Pure Meat Nanling. After Nanling found out where Jobel lived, he was about to change into his pure color faith. Suddenly, he realized something and put on his green uniform. However, under the influence of his spiritual power, the color of the warrior uniform had changed from light green to dark blue, which felt a bit dark. Then he said, "From now on, the communication will be silent, but tell them not to worry, I have confidence." He was confident, and this confidence came from his deep understanding of spiritual power and cultivation. Before Li Ji could agree, he had already taken off the wisdom core on his neck and even pulled out the spiritual furnace on his chest. And this was not over yet. He thought about it for a while, and suddenly cut a hole in his palm, and then a string of faint silver droplets flowed out. This was the auxiliary instrument that was originally in his body. But now, he found that he actually didn't need this thing anymore. Li Ji said in surprise, "You don't even bring the spirit furnace and the auxiliary instrument." Nanling said, "The spirit furnace will emit some weak electromagnetic waves. I'm not sure that I can completely cover it up. In addition, the auxiliary instrument actually has the function of external interactive communication. I'm not sure that this phenomenon can be eliminated." After doing all this, he was already relaxed. At this time, there was no trace of technology in his body. He was in a completely physical state. Pure flesh Nanling appeared. He felt that there was no part of his body that did not belong to him and felt very, very comfortable. He even felt that he did not want to put these parts back. Unfortunately, it was destined to be impossible in this era. After all, he needed the smart core to connect to the network for him, and he also needed the spirit furnace to provide energy for the smart core. But it shouldn't be a big problem for a special operation occasionally. He smiled, but the smile gradually became more and more unbridled. Then he disappeared silently without leaving a trace. Seeing this, Li Ji immediately hacked into all the monitoring equipment in a large area around him, and then used her extremely high computing power to perform various trace analyses, but nothing was found. She could not find any trace of Nanling at all. Then she gave up, and couldn't help but sigh that this kid has grown so fast. Li Ji couldn't find Nanling, that's because Nanling had completely merged into the wind. He was just a breeze at this time, how could he be discovered by any monitoring equipment? Even the instruments for detecting spiritual power couldn't find his existence, because these instruments couldn't understand what spiritual power with concepts was like. After all, humans discovered spiritual power through technology, but if you want to learn spiritual power in depth, technology is not the only way. Nanling entered the wind, and except for his own will, he was as if he didn't exist in this world at all. He didn't even walk in the normal passages in this space station, but directly entered the air purification system covering the entire space station. To be honest, Nanling was quite panicked in this air purification system. This was spraying potions and polymer filtration. Wouldn't he play himself to death? But he found that spiritual power was more magical than he imagined. His divine consciousness completely skipped the process in this air treatment system, and he could feel the air flowing in and out of this device, so he naturally appeared at the exit of this air treatment system. In this wind, he seemed to have teleported. Nanling felt that his understanding of wind escape had reached a new level. At first, he had to be in a place where the air was flowing to perform wind escape. Later, he could perform wind escape in any place where the air could flow. Now, he found that he had evolved to the concept of flow. This was also the essence of his talent, flowing wind. In this way, he had completely digested his so-called talent and turned it into a part that he had fully mastered. Perhaps it was because flowing wind was too simple and basic, so he was able to master it so quickly. But simplicity has its advantages, and this talent is not just to strengthen his ability in a certain aspect. When he completely integrated into the wind, he found that another important key role of this talent was actually as a key to open the door to the wind field for him. Now, he was already in this wind field, facing the magical world of all things. He couldn't help but stare at it in a daze. Fortunately, his willpower was strong enough, and he quickly came back to his senses from this situation. He realized that he had used his abilities too little and had overlooked many magical realms that he should have mastered and entered long ago. It seemed that it was a problem to just guess without practicing. How about participating in the next challenge? Nanling made a decision in his heart. At this time, he had arrived at the mansion where Councillor Jobel lived according to the coordinates in his mind. This is a small building with 7 floors. It occupies a large area like a manor, just like the usual atmosphere of the Star Special Zone. There is also a large courtyard around it, with sentries everywhere. There are not only mechanical guards controlled by AI, but also many elite human security guards patrolling around. Nanling did not pause at all. His body floated in the wind through the high-temperature energy network around him without triggering any alarm. It was very easy to come here and go in. He could get through any gap. He even vaguely touched the realm of molecular flow, so he could easily get into some gaps that were originally inaccessible. However, when he was in this building, he had a very bad feeling. The whole building was under surveillance, and there was no blind spot. But he was in the wind escape state and his whole body had been vaporized, so he would not be detected by any detection device at all. He was in a completely virtual state at this time. Under the effect of spiritual power, his body changed from a material state to an energy state, or a spirit state. He did not use his divine thoughts directly, because the technology of this era could detect the fluctuations of divine thoughts. But from another perspective, if his will was mixed into the wind and sensed by the wind, then there would be no need to worry at all. As a result, he found with a little impatience that there were 3 floors of space under this house that only hit 7 floors on the surface, and the 3 underground floors were full of some creepy smells. First, it was the smell of various spices mixed together, which was very pungent to Nanling. There was also the rotten stench that could not be covered up by the mixture of spices. Some of it was like a kitchen, and it was like something else. Nanling knew that there must be something wrong here, but he was not sure if he had time to explore it, so he first quickly passed through the rooms on the ground floor of the entire building. He found that almost every floor was a large room, and except for the bottom floor, there was only 1 woman living in each floor. Looking at these young and beautiful women, Nanling was silent. This congressman is really good at playing. However, Yajitbi was not on the floor where these women lived. Nanling knew that Liji's information was correct. She said that Yajitbi was in her home, so it must be correct. So he did not hesitate too much and went to the entrance of the underground passage on the 1st floor. Fen had already told him the terrain here. Chapter 325 The Evil Place. There seemed to be a constant whimpering in the wind. Nanling didn't expect that there were more people in this underground space than on the ground. But when he saw the scene of the underground floor through the perspective of the wind, his heart almost stopped beating. He saw dozens of handsome boys and girls imprisoned in single rooms like prison cells. They were naked, with collars and chains around their necks, like pigs and dogs. Nanling didn't know that this underground scene would be like this, and then he thought of the evil habits of the big men. I didn't expect that Judgeable was bright and gentle on the surface, but secretly did such a dirty thing. Who is it? Suddenly, a whistling sound came to his ears. He was nervous, knowing that someone had discovered his invasion. After all, he underestimated the world. He felt a very unique wave of divine thoughts gathering towards him. Seeing this, Nanling hurriedly fled again, not daring to stay where he was. He felt the strength of this divine thought, which should be the golden elixir cultivation. It was strange. He shouldn't have been discovered by a Jindan, or at least a person who had just entered the Jindan level. Although the other party's divine consciousness could detect him, it was not very strong. Nanling was a little confused and could only attribute it to the special skills of the other party. He fled far away, but what made him helpless was that he had obviously alerted the guards in the mansion. Although the other party could not find him for a while, his plan to sneak in and intimidate him was completely untenable. Nanling was a little annoyed, and the scene he saw in this underground space also made him angry. At this time, the divine consciousness explored again. The other party really had a unique detection method, and it came up. Nanling escaped once, and this time he suddenly stood still. He thought about it, and the dark blue warrior uniform on his body was suddenly covered by the flamboyant flames. A human figure was vaguely revealed in the flames, but it was completely impossible to tell who the person in the fire was. At this time, Nanling's appearance looked very much like Yu's advanced defensive secret method flame demon armor. In fact, it was indeed copied by Nanling based on the flame demon armor he had come into contact with. After all, the 11th level of his foundation building was the fire spirit array, and with the help of the combustion support technique, the spiritual power accumulated in his 11th level could show the ultimate effect at the lowest cost. He didn't even know how the defensor of his version compared to the original flame demon armor was. But that didn't matter, it was just a show. I caught you. A cold voice came from the air, and the opponent's mind instantly gathered an extremely cold spiritual power. Unexpectedly, this was actually a water cultivator, and the attribute just happened to restrain the flames displayed by Nanling at this time. But it didn't matter. Nanling had long stopped believing in the things of attribute restraint, and he didn't move, allowing the mind to gather the cold water spiritual power. Naturally, it didn't hurt at all. He even paused for a moment, and said with a strange laugh, "Didn't anyone tell you that using divine thoughts recklessly is a dangerous thing?" As soon as he finished speaking, he actually attacked with his own divine thoughts. Boom! A violent collision on the spiritual level. This time, Nanling felt the opponent's divine thoughts, will and position very intuitively. At least when the opponent's divine thoughts were completely retreating, he sneered and responded, "I got you." He returned the words directly. "It's hard." At this time, he finally confirmed that his divine thoughts definitely surpassed the opponent in strength. Even if the opponent is a golden elixir, the amount of divine thoughts is stronger than his. But he has been thinking about ancient methods and competing with the wisdom core all the way. If the strength of divine thoughts can still be guessed by common sense, it would be too much. The opponent was really like being hit on the head with a club. At this time, he retreated completely and was probably trembling. But Nanling was not prepared to indulge at all. He was already exposed to the surveillance at this time, so he simply rushed directly to the second underground floor. There was no trace of Jacques Bell on the upper floors, so he might be on the second or third floor underground. He decided to carry out his duties forcefully. And this time, he would face a large number of enemies. Robot guards kept appearing in front, but Nanling rushed into them like a cannonball, and his energy attack would disappear directly when it landed on the fire spirit power on the surface of the body. This was the effect of his samurai suit. If he couldn't even resist this level of attack, it would be worth the effort he spent. Nanling's attack was to casually reach out and touch the surface of the mechanical body, and then the various components inside would be immediately burned by the high temperature and completely lose their effectiveness. The spirit power penetrated its outer armor and directly destroyed the internal components. This was already a very clever way to use the fire technique. He didn't learn much fire technique, but he was proficient in one method and 100 methods, and he could use many of them at will. More importantly, his physical strength could not lose to these mechanical guards, and as long as he was a little stalemate, the opponent would be directly burned from the inside. This made the number of mechanical guards useless, and he killed them directly into the passage leading to the second underground floor. What was left along the way were the parts of the mechanical guards and the chart bodies. Yes, he killed people. Because he felt that people who saw these cages every day but were indifferent were probably not good people. Don't talk about taking money to do things. Since you have sold your soul to the devil for money, you must be prepared to die for it. Just like he took the salary of founded boss and owed System O money, he would not hesitate to block the gun for them. On the second underground floor, his anger was even stronger, and even erupted like a volcano. Because this is not a place where people like Councillor Yaji live, this is a huge kitchen, but the contents of the kitchen are horrifying. The young corpses that were disemboweled and disassembled immediately reminded Nanling of the young men and women imprisoned on the upper floor. This is not to be raised for pleasure, this is to be raised like an animal to be slaughtered and cooked. Even at the entrance, he saw a body that had just been dismembered. Its internal organs had been taken out, and the tenderest meat on its body had been dug out and was being slowly fried on the fire. He closed his eyes. He couldn't bear to witness such a scene. But his perception exploded as never before, and his mind was released without scruples, immediately filling the entire underground second floor and into the underground third floor. Found it. He whispered softly. Then he walked over with firm steps. Killing people is always an unpleasant thing. Nanling is now going to do something that makes him unhappy. But he has to do it, so his will is extremely firm. And wherever he passes, a sea of burning fire is ignited. He also thought about exposing everything here to the outside world, but then he thought, even if he exposed it, what would happen? It was just suppressed by the powerful Yaji family. It would be better to burn it all with fire. Well, but the children on the upper floor must not be harmed. He lit the fire to purify the filth of the world with his warm and kind heart as much as possible. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.